Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is DAREN DOCHTERMAN.
And this is Ashley Miller.
And we are the inglorious
Treksperts.
Treksperts.
And
who the
welcome.
hell am I? I don't know.
So welcome back to another episode. We're once again joined by Robert Meyer Burnett from the Observatory. Welcome back, Rob. For episode number nine.
Happy to be here. So happy to be here. You know, I love doing this with you fellows.
We're in the home stretch.
It's the penultimate episode of the holiday countdown. And before we start, I just want to say this has been a very difficult week for those of us in Los Angeles. I want to thank everyone. And there were a lot of you who reached out to us by phone, email, social to check on us. Thankfully, Darren, myself, and Rob are all okay. And Ashley is a mutinous, disloyal, computerized half-breed who deserted our ship and moved out of Los Angeles 2 years ago. So the hell with him. So many people in our Star Trek family have lost their homes, including cast and crew. And our heart sincerely goes out to all of them. A few like Denise Crosby, David Goodman, and Aaron Walke have talked about it publicly. So we'll acknowledge that. But there are many more who haven't. And we want to respect their privacy, so we're not going to mention it. But some people that you know and would be absolutely horrified to hear of their loss. We are so grateful to the Los Angeles Fire Department for everything they've done and are continuing to do on the front lines. And as we celebrate and fet fictional heroes every week on this show, we want to take a moment to celebrate the real heroes who put their lives on the line to protect other people and their property, in some cases, their action figure collections. Speaking for myself, I wrestled with whether or not we should even continue these countdowns at the present time, which admittedly are extremely frivolous, shocking, given the events of the recent weeks. But given this tragedy, along with the tragedy happening in Washington on January 20th, I remembered how many of you reached out to us during the pandemic and shared how the show was so meaningful to you and how meaningful in buoying your spirits and making you laugh during the most challenging and oppressive of times. So I, from at least on my own, decided in the best Hollywood tradition, the show must go on. And I'm glad to say, so say we all. So now we go on and bring you the episode 9 of our 10-part holiday countdown, top 10 guilty pleasures ever. May Gary Mitchell have mercy on our souls. And hopefully we'll share a few laughs in this most difficult of times.
So laugh.
And the world laughs with you.
Okay, well then in that case, I want to say, people who've listened to the show know that I hate the way iconic is misused by people. Everything's iconic. This iconic. Somebody just, somebody was just born. They're iconic. Okay. So the new word that I hate that everyone uses, unacceptable.
Moist.
No, not moist. Unacceptable. I hate that word. Everyone says, this is unacceptable. Now, it's bullshit. This is ridiculous. This is horrible. This is, this will not stand. But everything's unacceptable. I think the word does not do justice to things people say is unacceptable. It's a ridiculous word. And it is so overused now. People say, oh, this is unacceptable.
Well, it was all started by the Coneheads.
Well, don't accept
Unacceptable.
it. Stand up. For what's unacceptable. I mean, this whole unacceptable thing. I hate that. I hate it. And you're going to listen. Now you've heard this. You're going to listen this week. You're going to hear a bunch of people on the news and stuff say, this is unacceptable. It's like, that word just makes me so mad.
We've
almost as
not
mad
to
as the
fear
misuse of the
words,
word
Mark.
iconic. No, but this word, it's just like, use words properly.
I got to say, though, dude, moist really sucks.
By the way, I have to say on Blue Sky, this was interesting.
That's not what she said.
The guy said that, well, see, this leads us perfectly to what the Dwayne Day on the Blue Sky was saying, it was very interesting, the debate that Mark and Darren had about the use of the mind fuck episode thing. He said, I tend to agree with Darren. He said, and Ashley and Rob don't figure into this because they're just on another planet, 12-year-olds. So they said, he goes, I know there's no changing them. Like they're just going to they're just going to say, it was so funny. It was so funny. And anyway, I appreciate it. And it wasn't in any way, I think, dismissive or saying anything bad about you. Just like you are, you am who you are. You're Popeye the Sailor Man. You are who you are, or whatever that is. And you ain't gonna change. So,
that's right. Never.
But yeah.
Can't stop. Won't stop.
But
won't stop.
we can disagree
believing.
with each
Don't
other
stop
and
believing.
still respect each other. That's
Exactly. That's a good line from a show I very much admire. Speaking of shows I like, I don't know how you guys feel about this. You all know, I mean, Rob and I think Ashley adore Andor. Just think it's not only the best Star Wars show by far.
I don't adore it. I like it as a friend.
But I just think it's absolutely remarkable.
With a hand job.
But I don't know if any of you have been watching The Skeleton Crew, which is sort of Star Wars Goonies. And interestingly, Rob and I don't like Goonies, but I really like Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, Skeleton Crew is a lot of fun.
I really like that show. I feel so bad for it that it's basically paying the price. You sounded
like Graham Norton right there.
Thank you.
Really like that show.
I really like that show, but it's paying the price for coming on the heels of what is, in my opinion, on a $1 per minute basis, the worst television show ever produced.
My son was just saying the same thing. Because I said, how's that Skeleton Crew doing? He goes, not great. People like it, but people aren't watching it. And it's because they hated the last show.
That's right.
I think collectively, I think Star Wars is a brand that has been so devalued that so many people have just...
And they're not going to give it a chance. And it's too bad because it's a delight. It's a frothy, effervescent delight. And Jude Law is a terrific Star Wars character. I mean, he's not playing Jude Law. He's playing
but he's terrific. It's such a fresh character, particularly in a world where their idea of a villain is Kylo Ren, who's just a warmed over Darth Vader. Jude Law is interesting. He's an original concept that we haven't seen. And that's what's nice about Skeleton Crew. New worlds we haven't seen before, new ships we have. It's not beholden to everything that's come before in the way that most of these other TV shows have been.
It's not Bill Holden.
It's not, who is Bill Holden? Nobody. William Holden's the best. Rob, what do you think of the Skeleton Crew?
I've only seen the first episode, and I quite liked it. I mean, I really love that whole episode, the whole scene where the pirates are boarding that ship, and the way they do it. And it was very Star Wars, and that it was old school ships battling at sea, but they had a new twist and how the boarding party. And I was like, this is really clever. To me, it was something. It was really well done. It was really well executed. I quite enjoyed it. It was a great. It harked back to the blockade runner being boarded by the Imperials from the Star Destroyer, and I really like that. But that's as far as I've got because
there's a bunch more clever things as you go along. So
yeah, absolutely.
But it felt like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Whereas previous shows perhaps did not.
Because all these other shows are they're doing Star Wars. And what Star Wars did was it did Kurosawa, right? And it did King Arthur. This is great because it's not trying to do Star Wars. It's trying to do pirates in the Star Wars universe.
Right.
So it's really fun and liberating. And, is it perfect? No, not at all. No. But it's really good. Andor. And I feel much better as a father after seeing the kid's father, who's the worst father of all time, next to Darth Vader, probably. So I feel much better as a father after seeing the way he ignored his son, put all his pressure on his son to take the test, and he's lying about the spaceship, and just I don't have time to read to you, and what a jerk.
Look, Darth Vader's a better father than that because he didn't know he had kids.
Yeah, right, exactly. Maybe if he'd known, he would have read to him. Exactly.
Look, I want to read you a story.
And the last thing I'm upset about, while we're talking about things I'm upset about, is they took the James Bond channel off of Pluto.
What the hell?
And, look, obviously, and we've said this, I mean, I think most of us have all the James Bond films on at least virtually every format ever invented. So it's not like we don't have the stuff to watch, but it made me happy especially over the holidays, that I could just turn on Pluto, and if there were no good Star Trek episodes, I could turn on James Bond, and I liked the jukebox of it all. Which one is it going to be? And it was great because then I could also, like, my son would turn on and be like, which episode? What is this? Automatic Secret Service. World's Not Enough. Live and Let Die. It's like, boom, boom, boom. I like the game. So anyway, well, I miss it. I miss it already. It's really sad.
I like to watch the Shout Factory constant live stream of Space 1999.
And do you guess what episode it is right off the bat?
Most of the time.
You can tell which season it is, absolutely.
But the thing about Space 1999 is I really have to say that there's a love-hate relationship. I love the first season of Space 1999.
Yeah. I love you, but
the second season, I mean, I love
Catherine Shaw.
Well, no, I mean, I love her, but that show, boy, they didn't get it that second season.
No.
The first season,
that's a whole nother episode. We've done this before and we'll do it again. So I think we'll revisit Space 1999.
We aren't guilty about enjoying the Skeleton Crew, but we do feel guilty about these guilty pleasures.
What a great transition. Thank you for that, Darren. I appreciate that. Darren teed this up so perfectly. So when we come back, we're going to explore top 10 guilty pleasures. And before we do, when we talk about our Trek guilty pleasures, what we mean is these are episodes we know are bad, but we like anyway. We're not talking about like episodes no one else likes. Solely the criteria is these are not good episodes, but we like them anyway. It's like, for instance, and this is not on our list. Say we all liked And the Children Shall Lead. We all know it's terrible. And then we would be like, but we enjoy something about it. And that would be a guilty pleasure. It's not an episode that other people don't like that we know is good. It's not like saying like The Survivors, like, which is a great episode. If people don't like it, they're idiots, right? It's not like that. It's like an episode that we know is not good, but we enjoy watching it anyway.
But there's something redeemable in them, whereas there's nothing redeemable in And the Children Shall Lead.
That's right.
And some people have always tried to come up with something, but I'm like, no.
Well, if you're a client of Melvin Belli, maybe you seeing your lawyer on screen.
Because he jerked up his prices because he was on TV.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
No kickback for Rodden.
But so that's how we define guilty pleasure. This is a show that we've done on the 430 movie. We've done episodes about. We've never done a top 10 list of our top 10 Trek guilty pleasures. But we are going to today, as part of this incredible countdown that we've started and have to end. This is episode number nine, and we'll be back with our top 10 countdown right after these commercial messages. Stay tuned. And we're back with our top 10 Trek guilty pleasures ever. And this, I don't know about you, but I think this was one of the harder lists for us to come up with because it's such a subjective list.
Because we're usually not guilty about things that we like.
Yeah, that's true too. But I think when you hear this list, you'll understand why. And I think some of you probably disagree with us, but that's your prerogative. But, but we're right. I'm just saying.
We're always right
when we do these lists. That's why we're the Treksperts.
We're the experts.
Because as we put the experts in Treksperts. Okay, so anyway, without any further ado, I want to get this list started with Robert Meyer Burnett at number 10.
Well, I got to say, this episode is, first of all, it is the one and only time that Gates McFadden was able to direct a Star Trek episode.
From the darkest age of time, a primeval terror is unleashed.
Deanna, what's happened? She is no longer human.
And a deadly transformation has begun.
I believe the crew is de-evolving.
Now, who will survive?
How do we reverse the process? I'm uncertain.
And who will fall victim to this savage nightmare? Next time on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
And for me, the reason I quite enjoy this episode is, first of all, I think she did a hell of a job directing it. I think that this episode has incredible prosthetics effects. It's got a wonderful premise, sort of, where due to the tech, a disease has infected the entire crew and devolved them into various primordial creatures. Now, it's not like what they did on Voyager, which I can't abide. This actually is quite interesting. So the entire ship is basically one big Dungeons and Dragons dungeon where everybody, I mean,
like Neil Gaiman's house.
Oh my God.
Marina Sirtis turns into a fish woman, and she's not the mermaid you want to meet.
No.
And it is, the thing about it is, look, I have to say, I have a pet peeve of Star Trek episodes that cause people to have massive genetic regressions, or suddenly their cellular structure completely changes and devolves them into some primordial monster. I hate that because...
Yeah, but it happens to you when you get drunk and then you wake up, you're fine.
That's right. Remember that time you tried to chip the cop $20 for taking you back to your room?
They did take me, though. Yes, they did. That was at Comic-Con. That is a true story.
That's awesome.
Remember the time in Sigis when... Never mind.
No, wait a minute. I'm talking about actual physical transformation.
Okay.
You know, and it is, you know, seeing what they do to our crew is inherently fun. And it goes back to my deep creature feature roots, you know, going all the way back to the classic Universal monsters. I love seeing what happens to the crew. I mean, it has nods to things like, well, The Fly, but it's more of a tarantula kind of a thing. Or it's just so much fun to watch. I mean, look, this is a bad episode of Star Trek. It is bad science. It is But
bad fiction.
As bad fiction, but as a creature feature, and I love horror, I think it really works. And I think that Gates McFadden does a hell of a job directing this episode. And you know, coming out of working on movies like Labyrinth, you know, she was a choreographer on Labyrinth. I mean, she had been around these kinds of effects before, practical effects and creature effects, and I think she really did a great job with this episode. I mean, and it exists for one reason. It exists to gross you out. It exists to see what can they do to our poor crew. And
it exists because Brandon is not in therapy, so this is his therapy, writing episodes like this.
I mean, I do, and again, you know, normally I hate Star Trek like this because it's just so unbelievable. There's not even, they don't even pretend that they're trying to make, they just wanted to do a horror episode. And I really enjoy it. I really enjoy seeing the creature effects. I think Michael Westmore's whole team had a blast on this episode. And there's some really interesting cinematography in it. And it's just, I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because that we picked this episode because there are other shows have tried to do it, as you alluded to. Voyager did Threshold, which is among their worst episodes. Enterprise did Impulse, where Vulcans turned into zombies, which is somewhere between the two. It's better than Threshold. It's not as good as Genesis. Why does Genesis work? I think it's because they fully committed and they pull off this absurd premise. It's what we say about Rascals. You know, it's like, it's a ridiculous premise, but they make it credible. And I think one of the hardest time I've ever laughed is when you talk to Andre Bormanis, who we had on the show a couple of years ago, and we asked, you know, how do you know, when Technobabble says, okay, the crew turns into a bunch of Neanderthals, you know, it's a little different than describing, you know, something in stellar cartography. How do you figure out the Technobabble in that? He says, you know, that's a hard one, right? But whatever he did, it is enough gobbledygook and stuff and words and that you kind of just go with it, you know. But that's why it's a guilty pleasure, because of course it's such an absurd premise that you know, we know it's ridiculous, and it probably shouldn't be a Star Trek episode, but it is, and because of Gates and because of Brandon, because the actor is really committed to it, it's a perfect 7-season episode of Next Gen.
I mean, but what I love about this episode too is it doesn't have any pretensions beyond that. Whereas something like Threshold is trying to convince you that somewhere in all that gobbledygook there's some profundity, which there really isn't. And in this episode, they just wanted to do a horror romp, and they do it, and it's fun. I mean, you already know before the episode starts. Once you start you already know what's going to happen to Worf, and they do it, and they give you what you want.
A werewolf. You know, it's funny because, you know, by the end of the episode, they're all going to be fine. But what if they weren't? What if that had been the penultimate episode, that preemptive strike? And in all good things, it's about them as Neanderthals now piloting ships, like an episode of Captain Caveman or something. Would have been great. And they never get back. They never turned. That would.
Well, then everybody would have seen Generations as like, oh, thank God they did that.
Yeah. Anyway, so a good choice for the group. And that brings us to number 9 and Ashley Edward Miller.
Number 9.
All right. Well, coming in at number 9, well, you know, there used to be a thing when we were in the heyday of the Silver Age of Star Trek, waiting for new episodes to come out. And on Deep Space Nine, you know, the way that the fans on Usenet, which was a whole thing on the internet back in the day, would talk about upcoming episodes, either with excitement or with trepidation,
disdain.
Would be right, or disdain. Exactly. It's like, is it going to be a Dominion episode? Is it
or as Mark calls
episode?
it, Trekadation.
Trekadation. Or is it going to be another effing Ferengi episode? And coming in number 9 is another effing Ferengi episode from season 6, episode 10, The Magnificent Ferengi.
The Federation's most feared enemy.
And we'll all die!
Unleashes an act of unprovoked hostility.
Our mother's been taken prisoner by the Dominion.
They're cold-blooded.
Killer.
Ruthless.
They're here to kill us all.
Invincible.
We're finished!
Starfleet is pulling out the big guns.
Don't move!
Is the Dominion ready for Quark?
I surrender!
On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
All right. So here's the deal. It's the setup is pretty dirt simple, right? Quark and Rom and all of his pals are trying to get his mom Ishka like out of captivity from the Dominion, and they basically agree to trade a Dominion prisoner for it. And it's kind of a heist, and it doesn't make any sense. And the tone is way off from everything that had been happening in the 6th season. Again, you got to remember that like we have come off at the beginning of that season on that 6 episode arc of the station being occupied and taking it back and Sacrifice of Angels. We came out of that, like we had a wedding and that was fun. But now all of a sudden, here we are and we're doing another effing Ferengi episode and it's a heist. And it seems to be taking all of the big, important, scary things like the Dominion and making them not big and important and scary, except, God damn it, it works. And it works because, or what makes it work in spite of itself, in spite of all of those criticisms that are true and fair, is that it's just funny. The comedy works. It shouldn't work. It shouldn't have any place in what's going on in the show at this point in time. But Jeff Combs is back as Brunt, and he's great. Cecily Adams is back, and she's Ishka, and she's great. You know, it's hard to find a performance in there that isn't great, except for maybe Iggy Pop. But I mean, on some level, you've still got Iggy Pop in the episode. That's insane. That's bananas. The audacity of that casting remains.
It's not audacious.
Well, it's
not
audacious
because Ira Bear wants to have Iggy Pop in his show. He's terrible. I mean, but it's Iggy Pop. But he's terrible.
Yeah, 100% the worst.
I mean, it's just absolutely, of all the people to play, you know, he's no Jeffrey Combs. Let's put it that way.
No, so few of us are.
But yeah, I mean, look, and I love Iggy Pop as much as the next person, but he is not good in that role. But the whole thing it's like Weekend at Bernie's, you know, because they kill, the Dominion guy, and then they have to pretend he's still alive. And it's like, there's a little Spock's brain to it all, where they trade him, you know, to get
in the pale moonlight. It is not.
No. But but they go to Empok Nor. It's moody and you know, it's also the Magnificent Ferengi is obviously an homage to Seven Samurai, to Magnificent Seven, where the Ferengi put together this team with Brunt and
FCA.
You know, and you know, all these, you know, these bounty hunters. It's just close. It's like kind of like a Mandalorian episode, but entertaining. And it's so misguided And I think we're in a way honoring all the Ferengi episodes because, as you say, it's kind of like the even numbers, the odd numbers. There was this fallacy that any Ferengi episode's bad. But, like the Nagus is good. A lot of them, House of Quark is great. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of great episodes, Ferengi episodes. But Magnus and Ferengi is really fun, but really dopey. We know it's not good, but we love it.
F is for Ferengi.
I thought it was for, wait, what?
And the banter between all of them. And Nog is great in that episode. And it's just like, they keep making things worse for themselves.
Yeah, all those Ferengi idiots had just this terrific chemistry. And that's what really made it watchable, right? It's just that they all sort of knew how to be in scenes together, and it was just fun.
Yeah. And you never knew who was going to be like, it's the guy who's like the tough Ferengi, who's like the first to die, I think, and it's just, he's like the Charlie Bronson Ferengi. It's just
Charlie Bronson.
So funny.
Anyway,
it was good pick. And I think it's a great way to honor, the sort of misbegotten Ferengi episodes of Deep Space Nine that get a bad rap when there's a lot more to mine there if you get past the cliches of, there are no good Ferengi episodes. If you're going by The Last Outpost, that's true. Going by the battle,
laser whips,
crap, yeah, laser whips and cod pieces. Just another night at Gene Roddenberry's house. Okay, so now that we got through number 9, number 8, we're stepping into Eden with Brother Rob.
Yeah, brother.
Yeah, so look, I have to say I've been defending this Star Trek episode most of my entire life on this planet since I was 5 years old. And it is one of the last 5 episodes of the original series. It was actually co-written by Dorothy Fontana under a pseudonym. And this, I think I would argue that this episode is one of the greatest examples of why you should never try and do something that's topical, meaning pulled from the headlines in Star Trek. That's why Star Trek is always best when it's a well-structured allegory. And this is, of course, the episode that everyone knows as the space hippie episode.
What is it?
The flower, sir. I touched it. It's like fire.
Aurora, cut power. You are overtaxing your ship.
Explosion is imminent.
You've caused an interstellar incident which may have destroyed everything that's been negotiated.
You've got a hard lip, Herbert.
What is your destination?
The planet Eden.
And why did you stay away?
Because you disapproved of me.
How do you know what I want?
You're young. Come, join us.
You make it tempting. Dr. Severin is insane.
Captain, it seems as though someone else is running the ship.
That's right. Someone else is running this ship. I am.
Captain, they're using...
And one of the reasons that I love this episode, first of all, in the beginning, even though it's the repurposed Tholian ship with warp nacelles on it, I love whenever there was a new starship at the beginning of an episode when I was a kid, I was like, oh boy, I'm in. But what's really interesting about this, or people could call this now the Todd Haynes safe episode of Star Trek, if you wanted to, going back to that filmmaker's Julianne Moore movie.
Wow.
But I know, right? But the thing about this episode that I've always really liked is, so you have this Dr. Severin, who originally was going to be a Vulcan, by the way, and then that was rewritten and he's no longer a Vulcan. But Dr. Severin and his followers reject the mechanized artificial worlds that we are hermetically sealed in starships, and we don't touch grass, we don't go outside, and he suffers from a disease of that artificiality. I mean, literally. He's allergic to the modern age, essentially. And his followers, and one of them is, of course, Charles Napier, who sings, he clapped his hands, he jumped for joy, he has a clean bill of health from Dr. McCoy. And there's a love interest for, believe it or not, Chekhov We meet an old flame of Chekhov's who's beautiful, and I can understand why he would go after her. And she's joined this band of hippies, and they're looking for the planet Eden. It's all a little on the nose. But the thing is that I love about this episode is there's great stuff in it, in that Spock identifies with their quest, identifies with them, and obviously,
well, he understands it. I don't know if he identifies with it.
Well, I know. I would say that understanding and identification, he might not believe. He might think it's a damn fool idealistic crusade, but he understands why, and he even goes. One of the great scenes is when he goes to play music with Charles Napier and the group and sing. And I always maintain that if you took the hippie aspects out of it and made it much more allegorical, so these characters, rather than be thinly veiled, the people that were right outside your door in 1969, post Summer of Love, hippies dancing around talking about
they
free
wouldn't
love.
be right outside my door. I have a garden hose.
Well, okay. But I mean, if you had not had that hippie iconography, I think this could have been very much a classic episode of Star Trek.
You're rewriting it. You're talking about an episode that doesn't exist. That's not the episode they made.
No, but right. I know, but I'm saying that I love it for what it is. But I think I love it for what it is, because I think everything there, I think the quest that they're on is really interesting. I think the fact that Spock tries to reach out to them, they try and take over the Enterprise to which I think is always fun when a foreign foe invades the ship. But then it's got a tragic ending. That they didn't really think it through, that why would the biology of of an alien planet why would a humanoid be able to eat fruit on a planet that you've never been on before?
I don't know if I buy your logic, because the alternative factor would be great if only.
No, I'm not saying. What I'm saying is, if the iconography was different in the episode could play exactly the same as it does.
But if they weren't singing and they weren't wearing hippie garb?
If you didn't actually try and make it a hippie episode about what was happening in 1969.
So if it were Star Trek 5,
but it's so now, baby.
Hey, fellow teenagers.
But the idea that there's always people throughout human history. I mean, you talk about Walden 2. You talk about everyone that's looking for a utopian. I mean, how many people have looked through
utopian? Say the same thing. Eden.
But I mean that's
Thor. His name was Adam.
Always something though that's interesting. Yeah, and the deaths
His
at the end
was Robert Paulson.
Rob, I love everything you said, but you still haven't convinced me that you're not reviewing the episode you made your head versus the episode.
I know. I'm telling you, I love everything that happens in this episode. I've loved this episode since I was a kid. I identified with what's going on. I think the only misstep I think this episode makes, other than the iconography, is Dr. Severin is truly a bad man. He's Jim Jones. He's a cult leader, and he's a narcissistic personality that is convinced. He's got his little rich underling, what's his name? The Tonru. I want to say Tonga Rad, and who finances the group. He's found a rich, trust
he's
fund
like
kid
Elon Musk kind
to pay for everything.
Baby.
And I've always loved this episode. I didn't, when I was a kid, understand that it was such a hippie thing. I mean, I liked it anyway. I've always loved this episode of Star Trek. I'm just saying that this episode is one step away from being a great episode. Just if they remove certain iconography, it could have been a classic. It could have been considered a classic.
I want to explain.
Could have been a contender.
That the way we come up with this, it is a group. So you're saying, okay, well, Rob is saying he likes it, but you guys are, how did this get on the list? The fact is, I'm just giving Rob a lot of shit right now
because that's fun.
Because I do agree that one, the shuttlecraft is awesome. It's a great shuttlecraft shot. So, that gets extra points for me. Anytime you see the live action shuttlecraft, I love it. And this is one of my favorite ships. So the little spaceship porn there. And then two, he's right when he says what's interesting, what's intriguing is this nugget about people who live in an over technology world who want to go back to basics and give up because they feel that this mechanized, computerized world of theirs is destroying them and they want to go back to nature. Not a crazy premise to, what have we gained so much in the 23rd century, but what have we lost? So that's really interesting and very relevant to the 60s, perhaps even more relevant to today.
100%.
But it's also the hippie episode. It's also Chekhov getting down with Miss Russia 1969. So, but it is, but there's a reason it's here. Of all the bad third season episodes, and it's pretty bad, it's just something about it that we like. But those ears, he's like in, what is the Rudolph's new shiny new year with the guy who takes his hat off and he has the crazy ears? I hate those ears.
Little baby. It's like,
they don't make me laugh. They make me cry. Dr. Severin's ears. Oh, I hate them.
They always unsettled me as a child. I did not want to look at that.
It looked like his ears got caught in a Chinese rice
I thought they were cool, man. I was like, I love seeing wacky, weird mutations of humanoid species.
His musicianship went on into the next generation because his son was Doc Severin's son.
Well, it's a good thing Dr. Mbenga gave Spock the Vulcan lyre.
So he'd be Dr. Mbenga.
You're a Vulcan liar is what you are.
But
liar, Spock.
Also, we have to give props to the songs. As ridiculous as they are earworms. And clearly, because Rob and I in Free Enterprise have a scene in which all the guys, while they're at, may it rest in peace, the what was the burger place? Rob, I'm forgetting.
Oh man, that's a good question.
The burger place on Pico, they all break into a chorus of Steppin' into Eden, Yay Brother, which we had to clear and we were lucky enough to do. Which I'm not saying that ever happened in real life, but it could have.
Those songs are not earworms.
Well,
the reason why it seems like it is because we watched the goddamn episode so many times. It's more like the Ludovico technique. Or it's like, or again and again and again and again.
And look, if anyone should know an earworm, it's Chekhov.
Let me just say though,
that's really funny.
The Spock jamming song is awesome.
It is.
Right. When Spock is jamming, it's so 60s.
It's kind of like a Beyond the Valley of the Dolls thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, Severin is more like
Nations.
The Carrie Nations, exactly. He's more like a Manson than he is like.
Well, that's absolutely Jim Jones, Manson, totally.
Yeah. So look, you know what? Why this is a good episode? This is an episode. We just talked about it for 15 minutes. We had a lot of interesting things to say about it. I could have never imagined as an 8-year-old who said, "Oh God, this episode is on tonight. I'm going to watch it, but I'm not going to be happy about it." So, and now we're talking about it, and there's interesting things to say. So.
There you go.
Okay, well, good. If nobody has anything else to say about The Way to Eden,
we got no more use for this guy.
We're going to go back to Darren Doctorman for number 7.
Number 7.
Yes, number 7 is what do you want on your tombstone, Arizona?
Pizza.
Gene Roddenberry was saying to get the show sold that it was a Western in outer space. It was wagon trains replaced with starships. Now we get to go back to the Old West, rather cheaply, as it turns out. And we
find something bad.
We find our crew.
Beloved episode.
We find our crew in Tombstone, Arizona. In 1888, is it? And Inspector of the Gun.
Aliens, you shall be punished. You, Captain Kirk, yours shall be the pattern of your death. I'm not Ike Clanton.
Well, I'm glad to meet you, Mr. Kirk.
You've got until 5 tonight to get your horse-stealing, scurvy crew out of town.
The Earps will kill the Clantons at the OK Corral at 5 o'clock.
We are the Clantons.
At 1 minute past 5, you'll find a hole in your head right from this gun.
Billy!
We're not going to move from this spot.
They're shadows, illusions, nothing but ghosts.
And you know what? It's a really interesting premise that somehow the Melkotians went into the depths of Kirk's mind and found this bit of lore to subject them to
the pattern of your death,
sentence them. And I think that the production of this episode was pretty fantastic, considering that they didn't have enough money to do this, on a backlot, and to build complete sets. So it takes actually a very sort of German expressionist method of showing Tombstone with red skies and single faced sets representing the buildings. It's pretty fantastic in its strangeness and its alienness, while still showing Doc Holliday's dentist office and barbershop. I think it's a lot of fun. It's goofy, yes. Seeing them walking around with 6-gun rigs, and they're not wearing hats. Why are they not?
They're
wearing
men without hats.
Yeah, but I think
it's
the
safety dance.
SSSSTTTAAARRRRT.
If we talked about this in the font episode those years ago, the sheriff sign is actually written in the Star Trek font, which I find fascinating. It's not exactly the same.
Hear from that guy?
I haven't heard from him in a long time.
Me neither. He was such a great guest.
Yeah.
People
and it was
loved that
fun.
episode.
Fun to talk about fonts. Another F word.
Fun about
we put
fonts.
the FU in fun.
That book is great, by the way.
Oh, Typeset of the Future? Yeah, it's great.
I enjoy this episode a lot because it actually made me look up the gunfight at OK Corral, and I'd seen the film. There was a couple
the
films
John
that were
Sturges
made.
one with D. Kelly.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
He's the
never
only one who played an
before.
Earp and a Clanton.
That's right, a Clanterp or an Urton.
I know directors, they love to change things.
But I think it's a lot of fun to have our crew on the side of the bad guys, and change the lawful Earps into villains. I think that's a lot of fun, and it's also directed very stylishly.
Yeah.
With the optical zoom in on them, and they pull out, and they're in a different location.
And Jerry Fielding's score, if you listen to the Wild Bunch, there's a bunch of music he used in Spectre of the Gun, similar, evocative.
Great. It's a great score.
And stacking them up in the corral with their side views. It's cool. Really cool.
I had that on my wall, the official poster book.
That's right.
It was one of the posters. I love that shot.
It's really well done, and if you can get past the sort of goofy love story with Chekhov, and she is not a good actress, but she's trying her best, and of course Walter isn't necessarily very good either, but that's okay. That's okay because Chekhov is a youngster, and he acts differently than the older people. But
I'm going
it's
to tell
fine.
him you said that.
Please do.
Tell him that he's a youngster.
In fact, I'll tell him.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun, and it's fun to see our heroes doing a shoot 'em up.
You know what? I actually dispute that this episode even belongs on this list. Because I actually think that a guilty pleasure should be an episode that on some really just doesn't work, but there's something about it that we really love and we like and keeps bringing us back to it.
Look, there's no reason this should work.
That's right. Well, it shouldn't, but it absolutely does.
Yes.
And it completely works. And there's maybe one or two things that we're like, whatever. But we don't think about those things because there's so much about it in the execution that's just brilliant. And I'll tell you, to your point about the Earps and the Clantons, I was so my brain was so formed by Star Trek that I was surprised to discover that the Clantons were the bad guys. That blew my effing mind.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Isn't Wyatt Earp the bad guy? No, apparently not.
I thought so too. I have an answer because I felt the same thing. I'm like, does Spectre of the Gun really belong on a guilty pleasure list? Because it's actually a really good episode. I have an answer for that. So, back in the day of the Best of Trek books, whenever they did a survey about the worst Star Trek episodes,
you were absolutely right.
On the list. Number one was the worst Star Trek episode of all time. Boy, if they can only go on a time machine. But it was Spectre of the Gun. And I got upset then, and I'm upset now because it's not remotely the worst episode of Star Trek. And as you said, for all those reasons that Darren articulated so well, and you also added, it's a great score. It's beautifully shot. I can't tell you how many times we said we're not leaving here until way after 5 o'clock. Everything they do, that scene with Doc Holliday and Kirk is fantastic.
Fantastic.
Take my bag.
It inspired our plastic bag at
that nobody got
at
the
Las
reference.
Vegas.
And it's really a good episode, and it's so incredible that it's done like a stage play. That the way they justified having no budget was the fragments, and just you would see these just flats, and it's great. And the scene where he goes to the sheriff, and it's stormy and ominous, and
you gotta kill them any way you can.
It's a great episode, but so it's like, why is this a guilty pleasure? Because everyone hates it.
Because everyone hates it,
and they're wrong.
Everyone says it's terrible.
But I'm so glad you brought up the Best of Trek, because it's hard to explain to people how valuable and how much those books mean to me, or meant to me at the time. Because the Best of Trek were just compilations of a magazine I could never find on the newsstand anyway. Right. But they were essays about all different aspects of Star Trek. And they took the show very seriously, and they were really interesting and insightful. And I lived for those.
It was like a paper internet.
Yeah, it was really, really great stuff. But it used to really bother me that Spectre of the Gun was on those lists. And when I was a kid, like Mark said, I had to contemplate. I'm like, it made me, was I wrong? Like, did they know something I didn't know? I was always questioning this about their choosing of this episode. And it was always at the top of the list. And I think it was because it was just so off brand.
Yeah.
I think fans just rejected the fact. And by the way, this made me, I'm convinced this is why I didn't discover the Western genre till I was in my 20s. I didn't like Westerns. It was the only Western I liked, but I felt that I shouldn't, because of those people that said this was a bad Star Trek episode, and I liked it. And I'm like, they know something I don't. So I doubted myself.
And what they knew was wrong.
Yes.
See, I always love Westerns, which is another reason I love this episode. Like, I grew up on like Magnificent Seven and High Noon, all these Westerns that my dad introduced me to. And so, like, I loved Westerns, unlike musicals. And so, like, I thought this was so cool to start.
So what was your reaction to Paint Your Wagon?
I'm not a fan of Paint Your Wagon.
Which I own on 4K now.
Oh, well.
There you go.
Fantastic. Look at that. Did you see The Dreamers just came out on 4K?
What?
Did it really?
The Bertolucci movie?
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Really?
Wait a minute. Who put that out? That hasn't come out from a major label.
Yeah. It did. It's a whole collector's edition.
You
got to get it.
Yeah.
I think it's in print. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not in print. It's somebody interesting. But I just ordered it because I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my God. I didn't even know this was
British.
out.
You're going to have that movie.
Yeah, but it's 4K. So it doesn't matter.
It is 4K.
It's region free.
It's also rated 18. Yeah, but I didn't know this. That's great to know. It's on Zavvi.
Let's have a hand for it. It's British.
Thanks for that, buddy. Thanks for telling me that.
See? It pays to show up at the Treksperts.
Wow.
We know the Dreamsperts now.
And
Such a great movie.
2 words, buddy, Eva Green.
Green. Yeah.
Oh my God. Luminous. But, also it's like 1968. I mean, it's like that time period that we are so fascinated by.
Yes.
And Paris, the city you walk the streets of.
Oh, the city, not the character.
Yeah.
Not Tom.
No, not Tom. No,
Tom.
Paris the Magnificent.
Rob and I had the best time in France. Obviously, not the person you really want to spend time with for Paris, but Rob and I ended up having a really great time together in Paris.
We did.
I imagine you guys like the flashback in Casablanca.
Yes, exactly.
I'll tell you what that time it showed me before I even saw Trekkies 2 that Star Trek fans are like the world all over.
Yeah.
All over there. Star Trek fans are the same.
Nerds.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we had such a good time. That was the one we went to with Aaron Eisenberg and Max and Gene Jr., Rod. And we had the best time. Oh my God. And we never made it to the catacombs, so we wanted to get down to the catacombs.
But I got you to eat like fish that you didn't want to eat. You kind of had to choke it down.
Didn't enjoy it, but when in Rome or in Paris, you got to try new things. Yeah. So
it's funny that you bring that up because the jacket that I'm actually wearing right now.
You bought it in Paris?
No, I wore it to Paris, and do you remember I got there early? So Jose, Marina's husband, took me around and showed me around. We got caught in this torrential rainstorm, and this is a suede jacket.
Remember that.
It was and not only that,
you got there before me.
Yeah, and I want to say that it was Vanessa Paradis that we ended up going to meet some movie star friend of hers.
It was Vanessa Paradis.
It was Vanessa.
But she was still married to Johnny Depp at the time.
Vanessa Paradis, and he knew her, and we went to this cafe, and like 6 of us put away 10 bottles of wine. And the next morning, we had to go speak at that convention.
Yeah, and you were hung over.
I was I was breathing fire. I mean, it was great. It was great. But I didn't want to sleep. Paris was the most amazing.
You think they still do that convention? You think they want us back?
I don't know. I mean, that was an amazing. We went to the Planet Hollywood and the Champs-Élysées.
Well, I've told that story on the show before. How and tomorrow's the final night, and we're very excited. We're going to go to somewhere very special, and we're like, where? And they go, Planet Hollywood. And we're like, here we are in France, and there's all these great restaurants, all these amazing places, and we end up going to freaking, Planet Hollywood, which was just mortifying that was the big closing night thing. Yeah. But the funny thing was that we had such a good time that I told Michael Piller about it. And he was like, do you think they'd want me? And I talked to him, and then they ended up bringing Michael Piller the next year, and he had a great time.
That's amazing. It was, I have to tell you, Paris was the most amazing. It really is all that in a bag of chips.
We had such a good time.
But I remember... I remember going to the Arc de Triomphe, and it was really early in the morning.
Yeah, because you didn't want to go to sleep. You said, I'm going for a walk. I'll see you tomorrow at the rendezvous point on Tatooine.
Dude, I went ever. I couldn't, I didn't want to miss anything. But there's pictures of all the armies that had marched down the Champs-Élysées.
And they're quite a bit.
That needed the Arc de Triomphe for the shade.
And I never understood. I was like, why did the mayor of Paris capitulate in World War II? Why would he allow? And it wasn't until I was standing, I went on top, and it was cold, and I was there, and I'm looking at the spokes of Paris, and I'm like, I finally understood that if I was the mayor of that city, I would have done everything I could to
protect it.
To protect
that's
it.
That's what Jean-Luc Picard was doing. He wanted to preserve the carpeting on the Enterprise, and so he kept surrendering.
That's right.
But it was a wonderful time. I mean, I'll never forget that. And then, Max and Aaron.
Yeah, Sacre Bleu. Yeah, that was
so funny.
And that girl was dressed as Dax the whole time. That was... Remember her?
And she was on the wrong side of the convention. We all convention were politics.
They were upset that we were hanging out with the AV people and not the convention organizers. Like, why are they hanging out with the not cool people? Well, they're the guests. They should be hanging out with us. And we're like,
we didn't know. I mean, the convention, the hierarchy, the sci-fi hierarchy of need or whatever.
But they weren't fun. We were hanging out with the fun people. We wanted to go out and have a good time. That was back... we like to go out and have a good time. It was fun.
happened
What
in
episode are we on?
Wow. What we're talking about?
I don't know.
Something about
Dude,
Star Trek.
I got to get this Dreamer's disc now. That's what has become.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about memories. They were implanted. Didn't really happen.
Pit Woofy, build him a memory.
Okay. So that was, what episode was that? I don't remember. Wait, Eden, right?
Wait,
that was Spectre of the Gun.
Spectre of the Gun.
Spectre of the Gun.
Just
now we're on number 6.
Fun.
Oh, yeah. Now we're on number 6. Okay. Very good. I stand corrected. So that brings us to number 6, and we turn our eyes to you, America, and Ashley Edward Miller.
Yeah. So look, man, we just had this big conversation about like what makes something a guilty pleasure, and our whole debate over whether or not Spectre of the Gun qualified because it was really a great episode. But all right, none of that shit applies to this episode, which is in fact the first actual regular episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, The Naked Now.
On the next episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation,
They're all dead.
a contaminated ship is spreading a strange disease.
It is definitely like alcohol intoxication.
And the new Enterprise is on a galactic collision course.
What we're seeing, sir, is a huge chunk of the star's surface blown away, heading for us.
Now, the crew faces disaster.
We're not going to make it.
On Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Now, I got to tell you, man, Encounter at Farpoint did not impress. But because hope springs eternal, we're Star Trek fans, we're optimists. We're like, that first episode, baby, when that comes along, when it's really the show that's going to be, The Naked Now. That said, look, this episode, it is essentially a remake of The Naked Time from Star Trek, which we're no longer calling the original series. There's not an original bone in its body. It has no business.
There kind of is.
Well, there is, yes. But we'll get to the bone in a second. It has almost no business being the first regular episode because it completely improperly sets the tone.
It's got no business being a regular episode. No business.
It doesn't show us who the characters are like in a regular episode. It doesn't give us any particular insight into them at that point when we're watching it because we didn't know them well enough to have any kind of feeling about what they would be like with all their inhibitions gone. That said, there are some things about this episode that I really dig. Number one, the fanboy in me loved the reference back to the original series, even though I hated the fact that this was basically a remake. Okay. The second thing that was really good for whatever reason, maybe it was the costume, I don't know, was Dr. Crusher sweating it out with Captain Picard. There was something about that was very compelling.
And there's something really odd about that scene.
Very odd about that scene.
Picard clearing his throat. What is he doing?
This sex thing. What are we talking about here? Like about now, Doctor. My best friend's wife.
But he's not now, Doctor. He's so funny in that scene.
Yeah, it's terrific. But the thing that I think really makes The Naked Now memorable forever and became a gift that kept on giving. Honestly.
Yep.
And weirdly, it's this thing that has to string together with another terrible episode that is not a guilty pleasure. I don't think I'm not spoiling anything. Is Tasha Yar and Data. And Tasha Yar, wanting, a little joy.
How functional.
I'm fully functional. And I'm programmed with a wide variety of pleasurings. Oh, Data. Huge. There is something about that moment. And it's not just because Denise Crosby looks great, but I think it's about Data. I think it's about Data's vulnerability in that moment. Whereas with everybody else, you weren't really getting a good sense of kind of who they were anyway. But with Data, you felt like you already did know. And so putting him into this situation on its face, it kind of worked. And if you put yourself in that situation, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. But then it pays off again when we get to Measure of a Man. And, we start talking about Data's connection to Tasha. It pays off again in Star Trek Picard, season 3. I mean, it's practically the linchpin, to getting Data back. All because of this silly little thing that happens, this one scene.
The silly thing you did on a lark, Gene.
Exactly. And it's glorious. And it deserves to be remembered as an episode for that moment, if nothing else.
I think no matter what, the way to get to Mr. Data's humanity is to have him bang Tasha.
I miss Gene stopping by. He hasn't been around that much lately.
Busy.
Maybe he was off for the holidays, but it's good to have Gene back, I have to say.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Gene. GR. So.
Oh, he's gone again.
I thought you articulated that extremely well. Because I'm not a fan remotely of this episode, and I find it very funny that the whole lead up to Next Gen, they're like, it's 80 years in the future. It's an entirely new ship. Has nothing to do with the original series. It's completely new, just completely new. None of the original characters. It's its own thing. It's going to live and die by being its own show. And then episode 2 is a remake of an original series episode. And they're huddled around the computer. This is what happened on Captain Kirk's Enterprise. And it was like, oh my God.
I find it hilarious that most of the reactions by the crew is that they sweat.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
that's not interesting.
It's not interesting.
It depends on who's sweating, to be perfectly
honest. Well, and then
honest.
Wesley is like the guy. This started that whole cliche of
it did.
I made
Wesley
a repulsor beam.
I'll talk Wesley.
It's like, oh,
hard against Tsiolkovsky. What?
And the poor engineer, the rotating engineer of the week.
Right. Yeah. You remember on Murphy Brown every week?
It was just
every week Murphy Brown had a different secretary. I loved that there was a new chief engineer every week on Next Gen. Leland T. Lynch.
Argyle was there a couple times, and then there
Argyle was there. This was McDougal.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this would be great for the quiz show. We do the quiz show and we ask questions. Name 4 chief engineers on the Enterprise.
And assistant chief engineer at Shimoda.
Yeah.
I feel too good for that, Wesley.
Argyle and Geordi, right? Is there anybody else?
All awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're so bad. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the Naked Now.
Because it's now.
It's so now.
It's happening. It's now.
It's so 1987. 87, right? 87 or 88?
Yeah, 1987.
No, that was 87.
It's so 87.
Buck Rogers. Captain Buck Rogers.
Yeah, it was right at the week that Captain William Buck Rogers left Earth orbit and was frozen by cosmic forces beyond imagination.
Yeah.
That's what we should do. Guilty pleasures of Buck Rogers, and it would be every episode.
My dream.
Okay.
Who am I? What am I?
Sorry.
Hey, you know how Darren did great performances from Star Trek: The Motion Picture? You could do the songbook of Kip Lennon, and you could just sing that song.
I would pay good money to hear you do that.
I'd pay good money for you not to do that. Okay. That was number 6, The Naked Now. And that brings us to number 5. We're going to spin the roulette wheel.
5 is alive.
To bring us to an episode so bad that its writer took his name off of it. Yes, indeed. Tracy Torme's brilliant anti-classic. I think Keith Mills. It was Keith Mills. I forget what pseudonym he used on this. This was The Royale. And of course, he used a pseudonym because it was heavily rewritten by Maurice Hurley.
Next time on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Seems like we're trapped in here.
Proceed with caution.
A dangerous mission uncovers a secret alien passage.
Welcome to the Hotel Royale.
Where the crew become prisoners in a fictional casino that's all too real.
Lock onto the landing party. Beam them up.
We've got nothing to lock on to, sir.
Now, they must gamble with their lives in a deadly game of survival on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
We've talked about this on the show before.
In France, it was called the Royale with cheese.
Back to our Paris conversation.
This is a terrible episode, but stealing a page out of Rob's book. There is an interesting premise that they're trapped in a novel they can't get out until they complete the story. And, you know, I really like that. And it's so weird with this dead astronaut in a suite and all these crazy cast of characters that keep popping out and showing up and saying and doing things in that crazy revolving door, and how they can't get out of the casino until they bust it out. Yeah. And it's just a hoot. I don't know if I thought so when I first saw it, but over time, I've come to really appreciate the delights of this goofy, ridiculous, insane episode.
Yeah, it's just fun. And I can't think of it anymore without thinking about our experience in Vegas trying to get the hell out of Caesar's Palace and not being able to leave.
Rob, we went to the convention one year to Star Trek Las Vegas, and we went to go see Absinthe. And so we had dinner with our good friend Scott Mance, and we were trying to get to Absinthe, and we're literally like lost in Caesar's Palace. 45 minutes, an hour. We can't find an exit. We literally cannot find. And so finally we think we found a door, and it's Scott Mance. He's lost as well. He can't find his way out. So
you got to come with us to CinemaCon. It's at Caesars. I know it like the back of my head.
Oh, okay. So we finally, because you know the thing about Caesars is they kept adding on buildings, so there's no
and it goes around. You can circulate.
There was no plan for putting it back together. It just like kept spreading like Topsy, and so. It was crazy. So we kept saying, this is like the Royale. We can't get out of this freaking casino. Maybe
you needed a red, white, and blue motorcycle to get across the park.
Come with me, and I'll show you, and I'll give you all the landmarks of the places to eat, and you'll know how to navigate.
We know now. We don't need help finding places to eat, Rob. Okay. We need help finding them, but we don't need help finding.
No. But I'm using them as landmarks, so you'll know.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Chin Chin's over here, Peter Luger's is over here, Old Homestead's over here. Right. Can't go wrong with that.
Like Waste Area A.
Like Waste Area A. There's a little Space 1999 reference for you.
Look, Mark.
Wonderful.
I agree with you. I mean, I love like the premise of this thing. I love the wackiness of this thing. I think the idea of being stuck in a novel you have to figure out the ending is actually weirdly, maybe that hits a little hard. It feels like a metaphor for our job. And if they had taken a page out of MASH's book, you know, like with the rooster crows at midnight, I think like ultimately like it probably would have worked a little bit better. But yeah, man, I mean, it's compelling. Didn't we do a briefing room on this episode?
We did. And, you know, it's like Data in the 10-gallon hat and Tex. Because I sat next to a guy playing blackjack once who was just like Tex, you know, who's just like some oil guy who had a ton of money, who couldn't stop talking.
Did he make you blow
on
his
sock
dice?
In his mouth? No. She just passed away, by the way.
Did she?
That actress.
Oh, yeah, that's
Jacobson. Right. She just passed away like a couple of weeks ago. And it was really sad that they kept mentioning the Royale in her obituaries. But she did a lot of other things. And for some reason, if you do Star Trek, it's like, and they're like, oh, star of the next generation. It was like.
Clings to you like a Tiberian bat.
It really does. But the Royale is fun. And, I think given in a world we live in where there's so much bad Star Trek that's not entertaining, that's unwatchable, that's boring, that is not like when there's a bad episode that's
Royale
fun,
stands with those gladly
and watchable. Like the Royale, like if it comes on Pluto, I'm watching it.
Oh my god!
There's a lot of other episodes that come on Pluto. I'm changing the channel. That's all I got to say about that.
Wow. Yeah, I can't go there with you guys. I'm sorry.
Not a fan.
No.
Well, you've never been lost in Caesar's Palace.
I want to be. I want to be. Oh, I've been lost in lesser casinos. Let me tell you.
Yeah, well, we have a sponsor and we're a big fan of that casino. We'd never get lost there, so you should definitely check out the Yamava, which is a wonderful casino, and we appreciate them advertising during the show. Okay, so that brings us to number
they're right 4. Down the street, man. I love Yamava.
Yeah, there you
love
go.
Them. You almost never pay me to say it.
Yonada. Will that make the list? I don't know, Yonada. Okay, number 4, Darren Dochterman.
Number 4.
Bring it all home.
I'm going to delve into the magical land of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it has rules. You have to play by the rules, and these rules are laid down by Ensign Robin Leffler in The Game.
A harmless game becomes a dangerous addiction.
What if someone's trying to use the game for some purpose other than pleasure?
And the crew fall victim to its evil hypnotic powers.
We can't trust anyone anymore, not even the captain.
Can Wesley rescue the crew from total mind control? Or is he next?
We've got him, Captain.
Let go of me! High-tech nightmare on the next exciting episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
It's not good. It's a Wesley episode. He comes back after whatever the hell he's doing at Starfleet Academy. We don't know. Because, in the end, it amounts to nothing. That's the sad part.
But it had those cool early computer graphics that you can get on TV.
Well, yeah. And I mean, these headphone glasses are pretty amazing. They squirt the game right into your eyes, and it's really freaky.
It's the original Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah, but it gives you an orgasm every time you sync one of those
I guess.
side of the thing.
Or at least it makes you have your O face.
I mean, it kind of is good science fiction in that it predicted like the addictiveness of social media and video games and all that other kind of crap.
This was already happening. Already happening.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, we're talking.
Yeah, but nobody was having an orgasm playing GoldenEye.
Are you sure?
No, it was ahead of its time. It was ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was.
It was post Neuromancer and pre Snow Crash.
Right.
So there you go.
But no, look, it's an interesting story. Why would a rogue game controls people's minds and makes people evil and makes people want to hunt down Wesley? Which is not unlike every other episode. But it's fun, and Ashley Judd is absolutely luminous.
Yeah, they should.
I love her, and I love the idea of Robin Leffler being this really cool chick who can apparently get along with everyone,
even Wesley.
But I enjoy the premise. I enjoy seeing all the actors taken over by the game, and it's fun. What can I say?
Look, I'm a sucker for a good Invasion of the Body Snatcher story. And, Conspiracy was a good Invasion of the Body Snatcher. The Game is a good Invasion of the Body Snatcher story.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And like you said, Ashley, Judd is really terrific in the 2 episodes she's in. She doesn't get much to do in Darmok, but in the game, she gets to do a lot more. That would actually be a good action figure for Brian Volk-Weiss's unmade Trek line. Right. I don't think anyone ever did Robin Leffler.
Admiral Leffler.
Leffler, right. Terry should have had her in Picard.
No kidding.
Admiral.
And
she really could have been possessed.
Wow.
So
crazy.
But it's a really fun episode. It's super dopey. Obviously it's definitely, we know it's not good. Nobody's saying it's good.
Especially when Dr. Crusher is trying to get Wes and her to play the game. That's creepy.
It's so Invasion of the Body Snatchers, though. Just come closer. It's time to go to sleep. It's like
sleep.
Yeah. We've talked about this before. Nobody's trying to convince you it's a good episode. We're trying to say we enjoy it. We enjoy it. It's fun. Yeah, and the pleasure is, and that's why it's so high on our list. Number 4. That brings us to number 3, and once again we're back with Robert Meyer Burnett as we return to the one that started it all.
Okay, there's only one thing better than if the Enterprise encounters another starship at the beginning of an episode. And that's that's if you find Abraham Lincoln in space. Now, I am not, again, the thing about this, there's so many things about this episode I've always liked. I'm, of course, speaking about the Savage Curtain.
Captain Kirk, I believe.
Alert status.
Do I gather that you recognize me?
I am Abraham Lincoln.
Just as I am whom I appear to be. Seraph. The greatest of all who ever lived on our planet, Captain.
Some of these you may know through history. Colonel Green, who led a genocidal war. Zora, Genghis Khan, Kalis.
Sirach, no need to blame yourself.
We have a complete power failure.
What happened?
The shielding is breaking down, and I estimate 4 hours before the ship blows up.
To save your ship and your crew, you have to win.
An episode from the 3rd season of Star Trek, but it introduces a character and a concept, actually multiple concepts that are foundational when it comes to Star Trek lore. Yeah. Now, you could argue that because, well, you meet a great alien race, the Excalbians from the planet Excalbion. And you're next. They're
one land, one king.
The Tony Soprano of the lava planet.
Assholes.
And again, it's another alien race that wants to put people through their paces, put them through games, as they call it, to see what's what with these people.
I only seen one of them rock guys. I don't know if there's any Excalbians out there.
That's funny.
No, there's only one guy that had to come, So what these creatures have done is looked into the memory banks of the Enterprise and looked into the minds of the crew, however they did it, whatever they do. And they figure that they're going to figure out
Western was already taken.
If good can triumph over evil. That's what they want to know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so what they do is, and again, they're picking out characters from Star Trek history that we've never heard of before.
Right.
Now, Colonel Green, Zora, who we don't know much about her later. They're Colonel Green, who was part
Attila the Hutt.
Apparently, the eugenics wars, the World War III, the 21st. Who knows? People have written so many things about him subsequently in various books and comics. But you have Colonel Green. But he
did it in the briefing room with the knife.
There you go. And you have Sirach, the founder of the philosophy that the savage Vulcans adopted to save their race. I mean, and the story for this episode was by Gene Roddenberry. He didn't write the teleplay.
Shocking.
So you have, and then of course you have, good. The side of good is going to be our side. And Abraham Lincoln is a character that Kirk admires.
He's the good one. He's on the good side.
I have to say, the guy they cast to play Lincoln,
so great.
He's
so great.
Other than Daniel Day-Lewis and Spielberg's Lincoln, he's the best Lincoln of all time.
He's the best.
He's who I think about when I think about Lincoln.
I mean, his voice, the makeup, Lincoln. Everything about it. And, it's got the very classic, great Star Trek moment that is memeable now, where Lincoln talks to Uhura and calls her a charming negress.
Yeah.
And, of course, he stops himself. No one has to look at him. He stops himself and says, I'm sorry. I didn't mean forgive me. And Uhura says the great Nichelle Nichols, they finally gave her a great line. And she says, in our time, we've learned not to fear words.
Love it.
And it's an amazing exchange. And by the way, I never thought of it as much, but you watch it today and you ask yourself, should he say that? Like,
and I have to all of a sudden, it puts some irony on that
because
line.
It's totally in character, and he totally would say that. And it's exactly right. It says we need to fear the thoughts behind words, but not the words themselves.
Not the words themselves. And that was just an extra added oomph when Lincoln is on. Abraham Lincoln on the bridge of the Enterprise. When I started watching Star Trek, I was 5 years old, learning history, learning about the presidents, and to see Abraham Lincoln and learn that one of Kirk's heroes was Lincoln, that was amazing. Yeah. It was amazing. And then, of course,
and it's one of my favorite jokes of Enterprise.
Yeah, it's such a good, and the delivery was great too.
So great.
But then you learn about Vulcan history. You learn about Kalis. Kalis, the
unforgettable.
The Kalis, the unforgettable.
I can't remember his name. He's unforgettable.
And what's interesting about that is Kalis was later a character. Kevin Conroy played him.
I always get them confused. Don't you? Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, Conroy.
It's easy to get them confused.
But Kevin Conroy. See?
No.
Kalis is Kevin Conway.
Yes, Kevin Conroy.
Kevin Conroy was Batman.
Yeah. Conway was he played Dr. Haber in one of my favorite science fiction movies of all time.
So great.
The Lathe of Heaven.
The Lathe of Heaven.
I just had to
When's
say
that going to come out on Blu-ray?
They don't know what the negative is.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
I've actually helped people look for it.
I have it on video somewhere.
So do we. We have it on DVD.
And the DP of the Lathe of Heaven shot Free Willy. I know. Random
Fun fact,
things.
he should be arrested.
I worked on Free Willy as a producer's PA. When I met him,
filmed Free Willy?
Robbie, I said, Robbie, you shot the Lathe of Heaven.
You genuflected to him
and
for
he
hours,
was
if
like,
not
he
days.
couldn't believe I knew that. And that, that's, working at Warner Brothers in my early 20s was great. But so this, and then of course you've got the battles and you've got Help Me Spock, and people, it's just everything about this episode fascinated me as a kid because there's so many things happening at the same time. On one hand, you've got Kirk and having to come to grips with the fact this isn't really Lincoln,
right?
But it's everything Kirk wanted Lincoln to be.
Right.
And he gets to, so you've got that. And then you've got Spock dealing with Surak, who he worships as much as he can.
They
and
named
again,
a ship after him.
the actor they got to play Surak, you believe that guy.
Yeah.
You believe that guy could be some messianic Vulcan that came up with the idea of logic as a defining principle for a civilization. So good. And then the crazy witch woman that doesn't do much, but she's the crazy witch woman, Zora.
And there's Colonel Green.
Witchy woman.
And Colonel Green is great too. Yeah. Like the smiling sociopath.
Oh, he's great.
In a variation of Khan's outfit.
Wearing Mork's uniform.
I know.
Art.
You mean Mork wore his uniform?
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's so, this episode's so much, yes. Is it cheesy? Probably. But there's so much going on that's so much fun.
And Yarnik is one of the great creatures from Star Trek.
One of the
totally.
The voice,
great aliens.
The voice and his pincers.
The clicking pincers.
Was that a Hua Chang design? Was that?
I don't know. It might have been Hua Chang.
And the way he had the lights and the way he moved around.
It was
clearly
cool.
the Janus 6, the Horta would evolve into the Excalbians. That's
remember
they could hang out together.
Remember in the 70s how popular pet rocks were? I named my pet rock, Yarnek.
You did not.
Yeah, Yarnek.
No,
I mean,
I don't remember.
But that was it was everything about this episode is. And here's the problem:
my parents wouldn't buy me a pet rock. They said it's stupid.
Good for them.
And I said
it's stupid.
I said I
put googly eyes on it,
and I want it. But they said no, we're not going to buy you a rock.
Here's the problem with this episode.
Yeah.
You can't use this episode to convince somebody who's never seen Star Trek to watch Star Trek.
Right.
Well, but that's why it's a guilty pleasure, dude.
Yeah, I don't think it's a guilty pleasure.
This is not the top 10 episodes we use to convince people to watch Star Trek. It's top 10 episodes that are guilty pleasures.
And if you love Star Trek anyway, in spite of its flaws, like
this was an episode I always loved when I was a kid. I got so excited when this was on.
Maybe that'll be next week. Top 10 episodes you show people to fall in love with Star Trek.
Yeah.
And it shows you in the battle of good against evil that good will lose half their group.
Because good is dumb.
Yeah, that's right.
What I appreciate most about this episode, again, going back to Lincoln, is it's not just that he seems to completely embody that character and represent that figure from American history so well, and that he looms so large, even above my left foot. It's not... he's a badass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He is a badass.
And like you like him in those scenes. He never upstages Shatner.
Yeah.
But you feel like this guy is.
But when he's standing there holding onto that pole,
it's awesome.
He's awesome.
You believe it. And it's like, and just the casting is so great.
Yeah.
Don't you feel bad when he dies? I feel bad.
When he
finds him and he's dying, and it's just like, it's terrible. It's so sad.
It's like the Yesterday's Enterprise of historical figures.
It's like, you don't want Lincoln to go. And he says, I'm going to go talk to them. It's like, but Colonel Green is renowned for, trying to attack during negotiations. Mr. President. And he's like, well, I'm going to go anyway, because it's the right thing to do. And you're like, no, Lincoln, don't go there. Don't go. Stay. You went to the theater when we told you not to. Now don't go do this.
So good.
Where's the Secret Service? Come on. Oh, man.
Yeah.
It's a fun episode. It's really enjoyable. And that's what a guilty pleasure, it's what a guilty pleasure is all about.
True.
That's why
we're doing this episode.
Absolutely. So that was number 3, Savage Curtain. We're getting really close to our number 1, but before we do that, it's number 2, and Darren Doctorman is going to tell us what it is.
The aptly named number 2 is the first episode of the 3rd season. We get to see a brand new rear projected main viewing screen, which is very exciting. But also, we get to see a race of beautiful ladies in skimpy, sparkly costumes, and we learn that one can, in fact, remove a brain from a Vulcan and have him by remote control.
Brain, what is brain?
Well, a brain is a terrible thing to waste. Thank you.
Morg.
Life support. Was he dead?
Jim. Come on, Bones, what's the mystery?
His brain is gone.
What have you done with Spock's brain?
Brain and brain! What is brain?
This fellow is keeping us from our property.
Go away. You must not take the controller away. We will all die.
Nerves, there are a million of them. What am I supposed to do? I can't remember. He's dying and I can't stop it.
Yeah, we learn about the Morg and the iMorg.
That became a Star Trek The Next Generation episode, iMorg.
No, it didn't.
No?
It was iMorg.
Sorry.
That's iMorn from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, but Apple's coming out with the iMorg. I can't wait.
The bringers of pain and delight, or is it the givers of pain and delight? It's the bringers of wonder, the givers of pain and delight. Are truly wonderful. They're played by various lovely young women, and they run basically the Morlocks' den downstairs. And they have amazing technology that they don't understand. And I'm not going to make any more comment about that further. But it's really fascinating. We learn that there is a remote control for Spock, and it's truly amazing. It sounds like a ratchet when he's walking around. And it's look, it's one of the dumbest premises ever, but it's fun. I mean, when McCoy is yelling at Kirk, where are you going to look for Spock's brain in the vast galaxy? Where are you going to look? I mean, that's just hilarious. And we beam down to the planet after a very creative way of figuring out where they are. And lo and behold, we find Spock's brain in a box. And look, it's an interesting science fiction idea about stealing a powerful brain to run an entire civilization. And the teacher...
Better watch out, Ashley. They're coming for you next.
That's right.
Yeah.
The teacher that enables this amazing technology to be used is a fascinating gimmick as well. And it enables McCoy to learn the secrets...
Teacher from Khan's Academy.
To learn the secrets of restoring Spock to his perfect state. And you'd think that if he hadn't forgotten this technology that a child could do, that he would be a lot smarter. But he forgets it all. Why didn't he just write it down? I don't know. But anyway, look, it's a fun episode. Our crew is rendered helpless by these.
Done notes in his iMorg. He could have just said, okay, and set it into the.
The iMorg was the little helmet, right? That was the.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's not
whatever. It makes it more dramatic if he's losing his memory and trying to.
It's a guilty
Spock
pleasure
tells him what
because
to do.
everyone cites this episode as being the worst episode of Star Trek.
Which it's not.
And it's not. It's not at all.
No, because it's not boring.
Yeah.
If it were boring, it would be the worst episode.
Right.
If
it would be
bends.
the alternative factor.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's why it's on my list.
All righty then.
Yeah, look, and it's you said it, it's super fun. And the other thing about it is it gets such a bad rap for being the worst episode of Star Trek, which it clearly is not.
No.
I mean, In the Children Shall Lead is much worse.
Much worse.
There are a bunch of episodes that are, obviously of other shows that are much worse than that. And could you say it's the dopiest episode? Perhaps.
Maybe.
The dumbest episode? Not the worst. Not the least entertaining.
Right.
That's for sure. And again, this is the time of the first heart transplant and all this stuff that's going on. So the idea of a brain transplant is, again, very much in the zeitgeist at the time. So we get it. And, Spock walking around as a zombie is a hoot. Is disturbing. Yes, indeed, it is. And, it's another example of like every time they try and come up with a season premiere where they throw all this money, like The Child, terrible episode that they spent a bunch of money on, right? And it's terrible. A lot of these big episodes, Elementary Data, they spend a lot of money. In Spock's brain, we got this shot. We're going to have rear projection. We're going to spend all this money building this planet. We're going to throw a lavish ton of money. There's going to be a big, great premiere for third season. It's terrible.
Leonard, we have great news. You don't have to learn many lines this week.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to walk around in this jumpsuit, and then you got to do a lot of ADR later on because you're a brain in a box. So it's goofy. It's crazy. It's
mysterious and oogie.
Yeah. And it's, it's an episode that, the Pluto test is if it's on Pluto, do you change the channel?
Oh, sorry.
No, you don't. You watch it because it's fun, as bad as it is. But it's a terrible episode. We know that, and that's why it's a guilty pleasure. And when we come back, we're going to find out what our personal guilty pleasures are as we do our traditional honorary mentions. So get ready. Yeah, episodes, that's right. So hold on to your hats because we'll be right back. And we're back. It's time for our honorary mentions. These are episodes that could have been on our list, but represent individual choices rather than consensus picks. And as always, we'll start with Robert Meyer Burnett's pick for Guilty Pleasures.
Okay. I don't know what this is going to say about me in the long run, but this is from the 7th season of Star Trek The Next Generation, and it is written by Joe Menosky. It's Joe Menosky's special, baby. Yeah, now, this episode's interesting because it
Rob,
comes
I'm going
after...
to lose a lot of respect for you if you say what I think you're going to say.
It comes after an episode called Thine Own Self, where Data, it was a prominent Data episode. I won't get into the plot of Thine Own Self, but Brent Spiner thought, great, he hoped that the next episode would not be Data heavy and he wouldn't have to do a lot. And of course, the next episode is the great, I would dare say it's probably the Spock's brain of Next Generation, Masks.
A strange ancient civilization.
It is over 87 million years old.
Takes possession of Data.
What does it feel like when a person is losing his mind?
Now he's become a terrifying force.
She's gonna hurt us all.
That's planning a complete takeover of the Enterprise.
I'm not gonna permit this ship to be turned into an alien city.
And Picard knows only one way to stop him.
Death.
Next time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yes, indeed.
Oh,
Masks.
Rob.
No, I'm telling you,
man. Are so simpatico most of the time. But this is where I leave you.
Okay. Let me just say, when I was working on The Next Generation Blu-rays, and we were getting from CBS Digital the remastered 2K versions of the episodes, which looked stunning. One of the episodes I most wanted to see was this episode because of how the sets looked and what did they actually look like, because this episode, I'll be honest, it is a shit show on every single level. But the saving grace is Brent Spiner I mean, you basically have a comet that's the Library of Alexandria of ancient civilization, and it starts transforming the Enterprise into a bunch of Mayan temples. Basically, it's insane, and there's warring gods and different, entities. And look, everyone here is looking, they're shaking their heads. I wish you could see this right now. I'm looking at 3 people that
Asaka is waiting.
Crazy. I mean, all of this, look, man, this is Joe, this might be the defining piece of television writing Joe Menosky ever did. Let me just say. And he's a good TV writer. But this episode, I mean, Brent Spiner told me this, but I can't even imagine what it was like for him to sit down and actually read this script, knowing he was already exhausted for that own self. He comes into this and he doesn't just have to play Data. He basically has to play the pantheon of Olympian gods from some alien civilization we've never heard about before. And it is unbelievably absurd. It's completely ridiculous. However, Brent Spiner steps up, man. And by the way, his performance, not great. I mean, he's doing whatever he can, but I am fascinated by this episode. I love the way it looks. I love the idea behind it. I think the entire alien civilization that we're watching a shadow play of, call it that. Everything about this episode fascinates me, and I can't even believe it exists because we're 7 seasons in. We're on the downslope of 7 seasons of pretty good Star Trek. I mean, The Next Generation, this is, right smack dab in the middle of season 7, which isn't great anyway.
That sound
this episode, man, this is, Alan Moraine. If they sang the Alan Moraine song from Deep Space Nine, I wouldn't have been surprised.
No, because that premise was terrible. I mean, look, I actually, without belaboring the point, look, this is a terrible goddamn episode. It's nearly unwatchable, and Brent Spiner's just kind of weirdly embarrassing. But there's something about the premise that I just love.
I know.
And I love the sets. I love how it looks. It's just I feel like if I were the kind of person who would get high and watch television, this is an episode I would get high and watch.
You are the kind of guy who would get high and watch television. I don't understand.
Yeah, that's true, except I don't.
Dude, this is the episode you eat gummies, you have some edibles, and you smoke a bowl.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that kind of an episode.
Sokka is waking, and so am I.
I'm just stunned because I look at that set and all I can think of is this is what they chose to spend money on. It's like they this 7 seasons, the last season of Star Trek, we're never going to see these characters again except in the movies. And they're throwing all this money at building the Enterprise being turned into a temple. I'm like, and poor Brent. I mean, it's just, he's so great at doing these different characters, and it's just.
And he had no prep time.
It was the straw that he had no prep time.
He had
it was
no
the straw that
prep
broke
time.
the camel's back when he's doing these multiple characters talking to each other. It's just, I felt so bad for him. I mean, oh my God, it's just the worst.
The thing is, you can't forget it. When you watch this episode, there's something so strangely. Look, I would much rather watch Masks than Night Terrors.
Yeah.
I would, or Meridian, Deep Space Nine's Meridian, Brigadoon. And I mean, that didn't work. There's something so bizarre about this episode that I find it strangely compelling. And when we got that remastered version in 4K, on 2K, what was that? That was 10 years ago.
Wow.
I watched this like I saw it for the very first time, and it looks even better on the Blu-rays. So if you've never seen it before in HD, boy, it's a treat. Just sit down, watch it.
Let me remind people, these are our personal picks that don't reflect the opinion of the group. These are honorary mentions. And Rob's pick, of course, is for the 7th season episode of Next Generation, Masks. That brings us to Ashley Edward Miller and his pick for honorary mention.
Okay. My honorary mention also comes from The Next Generation. This is from the 4th season, the 13th episode, Devil's Due.
From the gates of hell comes the ultimate evil.
Who are you?
The devil.
A demonic power terrorizes a peaceful planet.
These people are all convinced that their world is coming to an end.
And a deadly game of seduction could steal Picard's soul.
I can do anything for you, Captain.
Your life is in danger here.
Enterprise, come in.
Your ship is gone, Captain.
Duel with the Devil on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
And my love for this episode comes down to 2 words: Marta Dubois, who is absolutely fantastic as the devil. Ardra, who is basically a con woman who is presenting herself as the devil.
Jim.
Yeah. No, it's I never seen the devil, Jim. She is presenting herself as the devil, and she is taking claim on a planet, and Picard basically has to prove that she is not. And
excuse me, what does the devil need with a planet?
With a planet. What works about this episode is her. She's just charismatic, and she's funny, and I loved her, and she could have been the Harry Mudd of fucking Next Generation, but she never comes back.
He belongs in an episode of Night Court.
Yeah, I loved Data as like the judge on this thing. Data was just, that whole thing was really funny. There was just something about it that I found wonderful. I feel like this either came right after or right before The Wounded, but either way, I remember the sort of the psychic whiplash of like Devil's Due and The Wounded, which is a strange double feature. But yeah,
there's something. This also is a significant episode of Star Trek in terms of Star Trek history, because it's the second episode from the aborted Phase 2 television series that was produced. Right. The first was The Child for the season 2 opener, and this is season 4. So it's interesting that they went back to that well and decided to use this.
Well, and they're both terrible episodes, but The Child is unwatchable, and Devil's Due is a true guilty pleasure. It's funny you picked that, because I know I was kind of lobbying for that in the main list, and just couldn't get enough traction for it. So I'm glad to see it represented as an honorary mention, because I feel the same way you do. It's a terrible episode, but I really enjoy it, and it's mostly because she's so much fun. Like, I think that there are people who love that character of the pirate captain in Strange New Worlds. I'm not one of them. That Harvey Keitel or whatever their name is. I forget, James Keitel, I was not a fan of that performance. I know a lot of people are. But to me, Marta in Devil's Due is just like this big, campy, fun, kind of.
She was a great foil for Picard, because she is campy and fun, and because she is just going straight at that straight-laced British bullshit. I mean, it's a great little combo. You feel like in a perfect world, they wind up together.
She's basically, in my mind, this episode's the lost Buck Rogers episode that they somehow remade as part of Next Generation.
Oh, Rob, you just nailed it.
That's
right?
exactly it.
It's like Buck Rogers just this week. The Star Trek is preempted by Buck Rogers. It's totally a Buck Rogers episode.
It totally is.
But that's why it's a guilty pleasure.
Flight of the War Witch 2.
Yeah, it is.
Planet of the Amazon
Although
Women.
That was a 2-part episode, though I guess
it was actually Planet of the Amazon, Planet of the War Witch. What?
But it was Phase 2. So
Julie Newmar.
Yeah.
Thanks for everything.
As the War Witch, she was so great. Do you remember what the War Witch's name was? Oh yeah, remember what the War Witch's name was?
No.
No, but I remember her henchman was Spiro, played by the great Sid Haig.
Yeah,
it was so weird. Spiro. They're in an alternate universe, and her henchman, his name is Spiro. Yeah, and also the great Sam Jaffe is in it from Day the Earth Stood Still as one of the council on Pendar.
Right.
Like the way I don't need no Wikipedia.
Pendar.
Right there at the top of my head. Pendar, baby. With Sam Jaffe as the head of the council.
Buckopedia.
The Buckopedia.
Half the people that listen to this podcast are like, what are you guys talking about right now?
Yeah, well, come on. Oh, Zarina. That was her name.
That's
Zarina
right.
the War Witch.
Go buck yourselves.
Oh, man.
Of course.
That was so awesome.
Buck you.
I love that 2-parter, and I couldn't wait for the next season. Little did I know.
I know.
Yeah.
But Barbara Luna.
I know, as the Hawkwoman's girlfriend.
Luna came back.
Oh, God.
I know. And God, boy, but that first season, Man, and I love when Buck has to team up with the Draconians and Pamela Hemsley as Ardala
awesome.
and Michael Ansara as Kane. They all have to team up against an even more evil foe. I love when the enemy of my enemy is my friend and they have to team up.
That's
so
exactly,
great.
especially when she's hot.
And it's interesting because they have this defense shield around the Pandora.
That was a cool effect too.
It's just like in Skeleton Crew. Right. I actually said that to Isaac. I said, "Oh, this is just like in this episode of Buck Rogers." He's like, "What are you talking about?" Because he's never seen Buck Rogers. I'm like, "Yeah, it's a great 2-part episode of Buck Rogers, and it's just like the Skeleton."
You haven't shown Isaac even the pilot movie?
Oh yeah, he's seen the pilot and he loved it.
Yeah,
and I'm like, well, now we got to watch the TV series, but he hasn't gotten it. He just
this week on the Inglorious Bucksperts.
Okay, anyway, we can't let these episodes go on and on.
Yeah, you're right.
While we talk about irrelevant stuff. We were a long way from my introduction about we're going to be a little more somber this week.
I don't think that's what you
said. No, we're not.
Yeah, okay. We all need a few laughs right now because life sucks. Okay, so we get to Darren now, and Darren's pick is not a Buck Rogers episode.
It is not. Never before has Hodgkin's law of parallel planet development been stretched so far and so unbelievably than in the Omega Glory.
Captain's log aboard the USS Exeter. What could have happened to the over 400 men and women who were on this ship?
Jim the crew didn't leave. They're still here. Wu is 462 years old. His father is well over 1,000. They sacrificed hundreds just to throw us out in the open. We killed thousands and they still came. Fight is done when one is dead. Spock, we gotta do something.
But of course, so human.
You just like it because it was a Viewmaster reel.
Absolutely, I like it because it was a Viewmaster reel.
Me too.
One of the best Viewmasters ever made.
Ever made.
Look, the Enterprise discovers another vessel in planet orbit. That's what the blurb on the first Viewmaster picture said.
And by the way, how awesome was that?
They discover the Exeter. Another Constitution class ship captained by Ron Tracy, who was a great commander that Kirk knew. And we discover a horrible plague has taken over the ship, and they quickly beam down to gain immunity eventually from it. And we discover a civil war on the planet is taking place between the Combs, who are the Asiatic tribes, and the Yangs, who are the sort of the Nordic tribes. And it is a fascinating exploration of what would happen had things gone differently on Earth. And through a whole series of really fun fights between Captain Tracy and Captain Kirk, we discovered that they have such a parallel development that they have the exact remnants of Revolutionary War time America. They have an exact duplicate of the Constitution of the United States of America. And it says the United States of America on it.
Yeah, it does.
Just like when we fought the Chinese in the
That's
Revolutionary War.
I just really appreciated the subtle messaging of this episode.
I would look at one point when I was involved in fan film production. I really wanted to do a retcon to find out how this situation came to be and where these artifacts came from, and if there was a connection, in fact, to 1700s Earth.
I think you can do a version based on like the Canadians and the Finnish. And just,
no one wants to see that.
No, it could have been like a Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
It could have been some alien intervention somehow got somebody some.
Look, the preservers obviously would have been involved.
Yeah.
And they have, they seeded worlds across the galaxy. Miri's planet was an example of the same thing. So I think there's a connection, and I think someday maybe some fans
will get to explore it.
You know what? It might have been an experiment that the preservers took our foundational documents because they were so impressed with the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and they tried to seed another planet to see if they would take to it the way America did.
This episode has perhaps...
Thank God we figured that out.
This episode has perhaps the greatest Captain Kirk speech ever given.
Yeah, of course.
This taught
Second greatest.
This taught me the preamble of the Constitution, not Schoolhouse Rock.
Not Schoolhouse Rock. We the people.
Yeah, no,
to
stop. Blasphemy.
Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the
common defense.
This is the all singing, all dancing episode.
If anyone wants to visit Kirk Corner with a K, both of them, .com, you will see my performance of this speech in my little web show called Kirk Corner.
How come we don't do more of those, man? What's up?
I'm done.
But wouldn't it have been funny if in this episode Shatner starts singing, "I'm just a bill sitting here on Capitol Hill"?
Oh my God, I would love that.
Do you know? I'm really convinced that our educational system is in the state it's in because we don't have Schoolhouse Rock anymore.
I think you're onto something.
I would go along with that, or Star Trek. That is valuable.
We learned so much from Schoolhouse Rock.
I mean, still to this day, I know what a conjunction is.
Sure.
What's your function? Hooking up phrases and clauses.
This script was one of the earliest scripts that Gene Roddenberry presented to the studio, to the network,
on the conjunction
for the second pilot.
Sorry, go ahead, Darren.
I'm being serious.
Lucas Xavier Sarsaparilla could be a new Star Trek villain.
One of Gene Roddenberry's first scripts. Go on.
Yeah, it was one of the three that were not picked for the second pilot.
I wonder why.
Indeed. But we finally got it near the end of the second season, and I really enjoy it. Look, Captain Tracy is a great villain.
Yes.
And the performance of both Shatner and
Morgan Woodward
is amazing in this episode.
When he talks about emptying his phasers and still they came.
We drained 4 phases and they still
came. No fat man,
and Cloud William, played by Roy Jensen, is the brother of illustrator George Jensen that I worked with on a couple shows.
George Jensen?
Yes. He enjoyed that joke. He's passed on now, but he was Spielberg's illustrator for Close Encounters. But he was Roy Jensen's brother, and he told me all about.
You must have been on Cloud 9.
This is a worship word.
Cloud Bill. He's just a Cloud Bill.
Oh wait, sorry, wrong worship word.
Wrong.
I love this episode. I've always loved this episode.
We know.
Nothing anyone says will change my mind.
Okay, and nobody's here to change your mind because it's an honorary mention, which is our personal picks for classic guilty pleasures of Star Trek. And that was the Omega Glory. Thank you, Darren. That brings us to me. And yes. I wrestled with this. I got to say,
we'll see if we are simpatico again.
I'm wondering what are the 4 episodes you'll mention before your actual.
I originally was thinking Let He Is Without Sin from Deep Space Nine, but I just can't get past the way Worf acted. He's so out of character.
Yeah,
I think it's an episode that gets a bad rap, but I can't get past that. It's like that Shatner song on Has Been. I can't get past that. So I'm not going to pick that.
I can't get behind that.
I can't get behind that. I can't get behind it. I can't get past it. I can't get around it. I can't get in front of it. It's just not going to work.
Around and through.
And then I kind of had the same problem we dealt with. There were a couple episodes where do they qualify as guilty pleasures? So I almost picked this, and then I'm like, I don't think it is, because I think it's better than a guilty pleasure. And that's Day of the Dove from the original series. I feel it's borderline guilty pleasure, but it's kind of better than a guilty pleasure. I mean, the premise, it thrives on hate, but given the current situation in the world, I think it actually has a little bit of relevance.
Awesome, though. Come on,
I do. I love it. I love
better
it.
than a guilty pleasure.
Yeah. But not. It's better than a guilty pleasure, but less than a classic. It's somewhere in that meat and potatoes.
But less than a betrothal.
I don't know,
exactly.
man.
Oh, Rob, you would put it that high, huh?
Well, I wouldn't say it's. I mean, look. Here's the thing: you meet our first Klingon lady.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And she's, by the way, again, another high-ranking, capable member of the crew.
Yeah.
The wife of the captain. And
we learned about Piotr.
She's the captain's woman.
Chekhov has no brother. But no, I think, and again, an alien that again, this idea of aliens pitting people against each other to do what they need to do, either learn about them or feed off the hate, was interesting. But I mean, come on. Seeing them fight with swords in the lower decks, it's great. And there's some great directing. Beauty. I mean, it's great.
I'm not arguing it's not great. I'm arguing whether it's a guilty pleasure. That it's better than a guilty pleasure is what I'm saying. So we're agreeing.
And you have a Klingon battle. You get to see a D7, and you didn't get to see them enough.
Yeah, and non-existence, that's where they belong. I mean, we need no urging to hate humans. There's so many great lines in it. And Michael and Sarah is great.
Great.
And that whole scene where they go marching to confront each other with swords is awesome. The armory scene is terrible. But they used to cut it out in syndication, so it's like it didn't exist.
And you can only imagine that perhaps Barbara Eden visited the set and was on the
I bet she did.
I mean, how awesome would that have been?
That would have been our wish, Jeannie.
Yes.
But there's so much about that episode that we like that, it's beyond a guilty pleasure. So I can't pick that. So I'm going to go with an episode which I'm going to get eviscerated for. But let me explain. The episode is Code of Honor.
Next time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
You must get the vaccine from the planet, Captain, immediately.
On a desperate life-saving mission, Lieutenant Yar falls prey to kidnappers.
Proton torpedoes ready, sir. Fire.
You shall have no vaccine and no Lieutenant Yar!
And the deadly trade-off begins.
I challenge you. A struggle to the death.
It's a fight for survival on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Now, Code of Honor is an episode that people have lambasted as being racist. And it is. It's mired in the sort of 30s kind of colonial, African being these backwards, society, and the white man comes who's more sophisticated and
tribal stereotypes,
and modern tribal stereotypes. Well put. It's like it could have been in King Kong, right? Which was a terrible choice. But I want to take you back to when that episode first aired. This was after the disappointment of Farpoint. And then Naked Now was this incredibly wildly derivative episode. When Code of Honor aired, it was kind of, people weren't criticizing it for being racist at the time. It was only in retrospect. People were saying, oh my God, this is such a ripoff of Amok Time. But it was like the first episode where, there's action, there's fighting, and there's this great Fred Steiner score. And Tasha got something to do. And
you will have no treaty, no vaccine, and no Lieutenant Yar.
And I just want to point out that those actors get residuals, and they gave it their all. So yes, it's mired in these tribal stereotypes of an unfortunate time. And so I would never argue that it's a good episode. I know that people say, it should be taken out of the syndication package, which is ridiculous.
No, that's stupid.
And I'm not arguing it's a good episode, but I do go back to that originally watching it for the first time and thinking, okay. I mean, I think that was the first episode I watched after being on the set for the first time. I was on the set of Too Short a Season, and I'd only seen Farpoint and Naked Now, and came back and saw Code of Honor, and it was kind of like, okay, so there is going to be action in the show, you know, like there's, you know, and Picard was like negotiating to get Tasha Yar back, and they were wrestling with the Prime Directive. Like people just dismiss it now because of what it is.
It's arguably no more racist than Coming to America.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
But I would also say, Mark, that what people forget, there's a twist in that episode. And that you find out that it's really a matriarchal civilization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
And she's the one who's...
And with the people that want to remove that from syndication tend to forget that there's a lot more going on. It's a very at the surface, because interesting, it employed a lot of African American, you know, black actors.
That was
in
the point
episode.
I was making. Yeah,
yeah, and yet that's all they look at. And you're thinking, well, why wouldn't there be a if the sun burned hot on their planet? It would make sense that humanoids on that particular planet. You know, they have more melanin, so that's, you know, it makes, but that's the great twist in that episode, is that the main character that we've been dealing with the whole time, he's not the one that really holds the power. Mm-hmm. And that was really, and by the way, I never ever see that spoken of when they analyze that episode. It's just it's a knee-jerk response.
People don't watch the episode.
A lot of the conversation about it is kind of virtue signaling.
Yep.
And
hell yeah.
Again, I'm not making the argument that it's a particularly good episode, but I'm also, you know, and, you know, it also would be, I think, you know, it's a lot of people who are white saying it's racist. I'd be interested in hearing, you know, how African Americans feel about that episode. Because like you said, it is a very powerful matriarchal culture. And there is some interesting things like the Fred Steiner score. And so the Amok Time battle to the death, and the fact that it's one of the few episodes before she dies where Tasha got to do anything.
Right.
And I know that, you know, she's not fond of it at this point. And certainly a lot of the cast is, you know, it's very easy to say, oh, that's the worst episode of Star Trek is,
no,
you know,
it's not.
Is it Shades of Grey or Code of Honor? But Code of Honor is bad, but it's not that bad.
But also, I mean,
the problem is it's boring. But hey, they fire photon torpedoes, which is cool.
But I do like. I do like the performances. You know, I do. There's a lot to be had in there, and I do think the fact that you have a strong. I mean, I don't know if I could battle it out for Angel One in the same way, saying there's a matriarchal civilization.
Right. And you could say that's misogynistic. And are you right? Yeah, probably.
But I do think in terms of with Code of Honor, the fact that it is a twist at the end that becomes surprising. So the episode has more up its sleeve than is normally referred to.
Yeah.
And, you know, look, the tribal culture was a staple of entertainment, you know, certainly through the 30s and 40s. You know, you see it in a lot of, you know, movies because, you know, Africa was always considered this exotic land. I mean, you know, even in something like King Kong 76, right? You know, and it was something that slowly went away as we became more, you know, aware. But
whatever happened to the Petrox Oil Corporation?
It's a good question.
Well, their stock took a real hit when Kong hit.
Yeah. Well, also when they started selling pet rock.
Monkey dies, all investors cry.
But you know, I think that, you know, it was so interesting about a Code of Honor, and I think why I'm trying to sort of, you know, poke the beast a little by picking this is because the perception we have of it now is so different than we had when it aired in 87.
Yeah.
And again, in 87, people were like, I think it was like, oh, these are 1-star episodes. This one's maybe 2. You know, it's like at the time we weren't thinking like that. And it's only in retrospect you look at it and say, oh, okay, well, maybe this is kind of unfortunate. But, you know, you can't judge the entire episode. And I'd be very interested to talk to the actors that played those roles and see what their perception is. You know, and if they dismiss the episode in the same way that a lot of people dismiss the episode who probably haven't watched it since the one time they ever watched it. And of course, we quote it all the time. You should have no vaccine and no Lieutenant Yar, which is like a great act out.
Yeah, right.
And it's a great performance. So, you know, again, I'm not defending it in any way. I'm kind of saying, you know, that even in the worst Star Treks, there's something, well, in a lot of bad Star Treks, there's something of value. Even Shades of Grey, which is a horrible episode, it's kind of fun for like a Cliff Notes, of the first 2 seasons. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that scene. Oh, that was fun. Oh, I remember that episode. Yeah, okay. It was a staple of like the sci-fi we grew up on in the 70s and 80s, where to save money, people would do these clip shows.
Were there clips from Code of Honor in Shades of Grey?
Oh, I'm sure there were.
By the way, can I give a shout out to actor Jesse Lawrence Ferguson, who played Lutan?
Yeah, of course.
Who said he was also in John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness that year.
Oh, that's right.
And he played Calder.
And he's great in that.
Shit,
He's
right.
great. He's great in both.
Not to be confused with the Rules of Lutan, which is in Space 1999.
That is true.
Because I think when we interviewed Denise, I remember her saying specifically, she says, yeah, people want to get it pulled out of the order. She's like, those actors get residuals.
Yeah.
They're not, it's like, why would you do that? And it's like, it's for everybody to make their own decisions about, how offensive this is. And certainly no one at the time, well, maybe some people felt at the time this was at least they say in retrospect that at the time this was, they felt something was off. I'm not sure they did.
If you don't like it, turn off Pluto.
And I don't remember anybody saying anything at the time or, pointing this out. Like I said, it's very easy through the lens of today to look back and say, fair enough. Okay, this is the borderline. We can see why people would find it objectionable. That's legitimate. But there's a discussion to be had. It's not just like, oh, forget Code of Honor. Let's pretend it never existed. Yeah. So anyway, that's my pick for guilty-ish pleasure. Not really a pleasure.
It's not really a pleasure. It's just, for your consideration.
For your consideration as not as awful and heinous as many people make it out to be. So there you go. But I'd be interested in hearing what other people think. Because, again, I perceive it through a different lens, having watched it at the time and not being African-American. So I would be interested in hearing what other people think. So, okay.
Indeed.
Okay. Well, that brings us to our number 1 pick for our top Trek guilty pleasure. And I think I bet a lot of you are wondering, what could this be? What are they thinking? What are these crazy dudes?
And what could this be
thinking? And it's like, and you probably are all thrown out right now, yelling at in your car or at work or in your house, listening to this wherever you are.
The basement,
you're not
yelling at pods
in a library or a hospital or in a spa. But
it's common that you're
yelling out
in
the
because you were buried alive.
Buried alive.
But we have a pick, and we I think we all feel pretty strongly this is our number 1 guilty pleasure.
Right.
Because it's not good.
But we like it.
But we enjoy it.
We enjoy it.
We really do.
we really do.
And that pick is Star Trek III, The Search for Spock.
Join the search.
All that they've loved, all that they've fought for, all that they've stood for will now be put to the test. Star Trek III, The Search for Spock.
The word, sir? The word is no. I am therefore going anyway.
You do this, you'll never sit in the captain's chair again.
Engage auto systems. Clear all moorings.
Cleared, sir.
1/4 impulse power.
Someone is stealing the Enterprise.
Warp speed.
Klingon bird appraiser. She's arming torpedoes.
Shields up.
The shield's non-responsive.
Fuck! For a sitting duck.
Join us on this, the final voyage of the Starship Enterprise. Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. The adventure continues.
Rob, we've talked about this a lot.
A lot.
Why is this a guilty pleasure, Rob Burnett?
Well, it's a guilty pleasure because, one, it has its heart in the right place.
Yeah,
and
down about here.
And
Vulcan has two hearts.
Look,
everyone keeps their genitals in the same place.
Star
Captain.
Trek 3, The Search for Spock, had a tough act to follow.
Yeah.
And, everyone considers Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, the best Star Trek movie.
Almost
and
everybody.
Indeed, it probably is. It's not my favorite Star Trek movie. That would be the motion picture. But the thing about Star Trek 3 is it has a lot of things going against it in terms of, look, not to speak ill of Leonard Nimoy, because I'm a big fan, but it was his first time directing a film. And I think being that he's a first-time director, the film is very schizophrenic. You've got these beautiful ILM effects, arguably after the motion picture, probably the best visual effects in the whole movie series. There's really some great stuff in Star Trek 3. Space Dock is amazing. I like the design of the Grissom, of the bird of prey, which became ubiquitous to Star Trek. The idea, the whole story, it is a good story. The sacrifice of friends getting together to put everything on the line for the possibility of saving their friends. So it's just, for me, unfortunately, it's got a great James Horner score. The film is so pedestrian in its execution, and I can't get past it. I can't get past the cheapness of that movie. However, Christopher Lloyd is a Klingon. Can you see him? He's right there.
Can you see him? He's
right there.
becoming
see an
visible
Enterprise
in my observatory.
Yeah.
Your visual hand says, yes, we can see him.
The thing is, we all want the movie to be great. And I think we all like it because of what it aspires to be.
Star Trek.
Not what it actually is.
Star Trek.
For me, it was the second biggest cinematic disappointment in my life behind Return of the Jedi.
Look, it came at a time where I needed it badly. And
badly.
They're also predictable.
I've told this story. I walked into the theater with a microphone on each shoulder and a tape recorder strapped to my back. And I recorded it, and I listened to this more than just about any other movie, certainly that summer.
But your life has never stood for intellectual chaos.
It is imprinted on my mind. It is a pleasure. It gives me pleasure, but I don't have to like it. It's a weird dichotomy that we know that it is not good, but we love it anyway. It's strange.
Well, we love it. Yeah. We don't love it.
We learn it. Okay, we learn it.
Just because it's not good doesn't mean that it didn't do what it always does. It turned death into a fighting chance for life.
It's the movie equivalent of a reset button.
Look, in a world in which Star Trek movies came out every 2 years, you could forgive movies for not being great because they came out every 2 years. In a world in which movies come out 8 years, 10 years apart in major franchises now, they have to be Citizen Kane to be worthy of the expectations. I miss that era where it's like, okay, you missed the mark a little. Well, maybe the one in 2 years will be better. The next one up.
The thing is, though, I had read Harv Bennett's original story treatment.
Right.
And the story treatment had two things going on in it that I really loved. One was the fact that Vulcan was so... the word of the Genesis device had gone out, and that the Vulcans were so mortified that this research had gone on that the Vulcans were wanting to secede from the Federation. Right. And in that original story that Harv Bennett had written, instead of Sarek coming to Kirk's apartment in San Francisco, they went to Vulcan, and they were there, and there was unrest on Vulcan, and I thought that could have been really epic and amazing.
The Vulcans wanted Greenland, but they weren't going to get it.
Well, I mean, it was, and the idea that the Genesis, this research was monstrous, and the second thing was it was the Romulans who landed on the Genesis planet.
Plymouth Rock landed on them.
But the Romulans, as portrayed, were again, they were the kind of Romulans from Balance of Terror. And they were there, and they had to deal with, Spock was still evolving, and he was attacking, the feral Spock was attacking the Romulans and taking them out. It was
great. That treatment was so much more interesting. We've talked about this on the show before.
That was another thing. I think I'd read that treatment before I'd seen the movie. And the film had such potential. And the very thing that bothered me was there was no such thing as a Klingon bird of prey. Yeah. That bird of prey thing was somebody, and I'm sure somebody from ILM.
That was the lack of attention to detail, because they made it based on the treatment.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then when it was done, they had already changed the Klingons, and they said, well, Leonard, this is from, these are not nobody's going to care.
No one's going to know.
But this is the problem. And I would say when directors are the actors from the franchises, it's great when it's episodic. Let the actors cut their teeth. Like, let Gates McFadden direct Genesis. That's fine. But if you're going to give a movie to somebody, actors don't know anything about
it requires
the lore.
One man or woman with a vision.
Yes, it does. It does.
And there was no vision other than, I want to have a directing career. Right? That's what it was all about.
Yes. And Stuart Baird had the same problem with Star Trek Nemesis.
Yep. Yeah, he just wanted to work.
Yeah, he fixed Tomb Raider. They owed him a movie. Oh, we'll give you our least offensive thing that we'll give you Star Trek Nemesis. Star Trek
clearly didn't want to do it. He just
well.
wanted to direct. Again, he just wanted to direct again. It's been a while since he did a movie. And, obviously he was a very successful cutter, but editors want to be directors. And they said, okay, thank you for saving these movies. Here, we'll give you a film to direct. What is it? Star Trek. Oh, do you have anything else? No. Okay, I'll do it. And the thing is, look, guilty? Are we guilty of liking it? Yes, because this is not a good movie. Is it a pleasure? Of course. It's the same thing people point out to us again and again and again. Well, if you guys don't like it, well, what about stealing the Enterprise? We love it. What about when the Enterprise blows up? What have I done? We love it. The James Horner score.
We love seeing our old friends in an adventure.
Yeah. And the characters are so endearing that they elevate a bad movie.
The thing is, that film could have been
great,
amazing.
Yeah.
If you had somebody like whether it's Nicholas Meyer or somebody that the problem is, and I think it's the same problem I think Bad Robot had. They thought taking over the Star Trek franchise would be a great business move for them, that they could control a franchise, they could control the marketing.
And it got him Star Wars.
Well,
he got to direct Star Wars because of Star Trek 2009.
Well, but I don't know if that necessarily worked out. It worked out once, but the problem was I think they thought they were going to be on the money train. And what's happened is, if you take over something only for commercial reasons, and you're also expecting to create resonant stories, a franchise is not something that a franchise is not made in a boardroom by corporations. Franchises are created by passionate, creative people that put their heart and soul into something that, for whatever reason, breaks through the audience. You can't take a franchise for granted. And in our corporate world, people have decided that franchises like Star Trek and Star Wars, all you have to do is make something and call it that, and people will show up. And it's been painfully obvious that with our biggest franchises, whether it's Doctor Who, Star Trek, Star Wars, you still have to make the magic. You can't just make something under the auspices of a brand name and expect it to succeed. You need the magic. And Star Trek 3 is a great example of a decision that was made to get an actor to come back to be in a franchise. He wanted something, the studio wanted something, but nobody thought, did the story want something?
If you try to extract blood from a rock, you get a dried out stone.
Unless
that's
it's a
just
blood
what
rock.
happens. Well, unless you put the rock in Star Trek, which they did once.
That's right. If you prick it, does it not bleed?
Yes.
I mean, there's definitely joys to be had. And again, I love when you see the Enterprise go into space dock. And I love to see when the Enterprise comes out of space dock.
In and out.
And no time for the old in and out, love. I've just come to
we all love space dock, except for one man on this podcast whose name
One man with a vision.
Ryan Lochterman.
Lion Lochterman. Your evil twin. The one with the goatee.
But even the fact that if you wanted to bring in a Klingon protagonist, I love Christopher Lloyd gives it his all.
Yeah.
But the problem is,
but he's a cartoon character.
Yeah, that's the problem. You compare him to Kor, or you compare him to
Wile E.
Kang.
Coyote.
Reverend Jim versus Jim Kirk.
And that's, I mean, I hate all that stuff because none of it's credible.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, if people want to hear more about our thoughts on Star Trek 3, they can re-listen to our 300th episode. We're joined by Kevin Feige, Steve Asbell, and Terry Metalis to talk about it. Also, of course, we did some great episodes with Rob where we did commentary as well as a look at the notes.
Roddenberry notes.
Roddenberry notes about Star Trek 3. So you can check those out. But I can really stand behind this. I'm sure this is going to create a lot of vitriol in certain circles, but I think this is a great pick for our number one guilty pleasure because it's a movie that gives us great pleasure and we're very guilty for liking.
Yes.
I do want to say, I want to give a shout out to Matt Ferguson for his 40th anniversary theatrical poster that he created for Star Trek 3.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I mean, look, I love Bob Peak's Star Trek 3 art. Once again, they didn't use it as the key art for the domestic campaign.
No, they used the light bright version.
Yeah, but Matt Ferguson's painting that he did for the 40th anniversary of Star Trek 3 is the movie I wanted to see. If that poster, if the feeling I get when I look at that one single image was imbued into that movie, I would love it.
You know what was so great when we interviewed Eddie Egan about Star Trek 3? He told us something really interesting. He told us, you know where the Star Trek 3 poster came from? We're like a kid's basement, a 6-year-old's basement. It was learning to use crayons. He goes, no, he goes, they wanted to be like that Jor-El image from Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that's where they got the idea for that awful death mask of Spock, because that original theatrical poster is awful. But the Bob Peak version, which they didn't use like with Star Trek, is beautiful.
Right.
As is the Matt Ferguson one, who's done some wonderful work on a bunch of these Star Trek movies and TV shows.
And Jedi, and he did the Jedi anniversary poster.
No, he's great. He's great.
He
He's
did
a real
great
fan.
Alien Romulus work.
We like that Matt Ferguson. I don't know him, but I like him. I approve. For what it's worth.
Bobby.
So anyway, that's our number one pick for our top 10 Trek guilty pleasures. It's Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Rob, you have someone else you'd like to shout out?
Did you guys give a shout out to David Kimball?
What, the one-armed man?
The artist
the cutaway of the next when motion picture of the Enterprise came out, he did the cutaway drawing.
We did not, but please go ahead and say something.
He passed away.
Yeah.
Did he?
He passed away. Yeah, he passed away.
David
Kimball.
I heard that.
Like in within the last couple months.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
That Enterprise cutaway, especially the large one that had the Star Trek the Motion Picture logo in the corner, I cannot tell you. In my entire life, I probably haven't obsessed over a single image more than I obsessed over that poster.
Other than Farrah Fawcett from Charlie's Angels circa 1976.
No, I had it right next to my bed. My parents made me put an entire wall. They put corkboard on an entire wall because I had so many posters. And I had that at my right where my pillow was I slept on so I could turn and stare at that poster forever. Well, that was a great poster.
I have Andy Probert's that was hanging in the Next Generation art department in the other room, framed.
Wow.
I had the official Star Trek poster book poster of Kirk sending Khan to non-existence from Day of the Dove, where they're lined up and he has the communicator that he puts behind his back and hits the red button, which I always want to know what it did. I current Commissioner Gordon, or it sends them the secret emergency message.
Wow.
Jesus Christ.
I had a lot of those official Star Trek poster book posters in my
They were great.
My room. They were great. They were great. So, and I had that giant poster of 6-foot poster from the Federation Trading Post of Mr. Spock on the back of my door. Oh, Jesus. What was I thinking?
Magical.
Yeah.
You were thinking,
same thing you're thinking now,
like Star
50
Trek.
years later.
It makes me sick that we're still talking about this crap.
No, it doesn't.
No,
Come on. It does. Right. Why? Just like there are people who are out there who are suffering and gone into unimaginable loss. And here we are talking about Star Trek again.
Life is a continuum.
They need something to soothe their minds. And
life is a highway. We're it.
That's right.
If people are relying on us to soothe their minds, there's a problem.
It is a problem, but that's why we're here.
That's right. If we can make them forget their troubles long enough to be angry at us about our opinions on Star Trek 3, then we are doing our job.
Yeah, no, and look, that's why we're here today, obviously. Seriously, what I said at the top of the show, just to bring it back home, we heard you when you said during the pandemic, I mean, it was really touching how many of you wrote to say, I lost somebody or somebody's in the hospital, and the only thing that gave me joy was like, listening to you guys, you got me through, helped get me through it. And it's like, and it's like I couldn't leave the house and I was listening to Treksperts and it made me feel connected. I was like, that was really meaningful. Yeah. So when, it came down to like, is it right to record this show when all these people are suffering and going through this terrible loss? But we decided, I guess it is. And so here we are. And this was the perfect episode for today, Guilty Pleasures, because this was a long one. But it was also, I hope, an enjoyable one. It was for me. So
I'm with you too.
Well, look, Inglorious Treksperts and the Treksperts Briefing Room and Deck 78 are part of the Treksperts Podcast Network. Copyright 2025 by Treksperts Plus. Executive producers are Mark A. Altman, DAREN DOCHTERMAN, Ashley Edward-Bill. The show is produced by Peter Holmstrom, Brian Mix. Original music by Joe Kramer. Video editing by Brian Mix. Sound mixing by Mark the Monster Mash Rivera. You can open hailing frequencies by emailing us at trekspertsplus@gmail.com. Find us on all major social channels, including Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Twitter, and now at Blue Sky at Inglorious Trek or Inglorious Treksperts. You can also subscribe to Inglorious Treksperts and Deck 78 on Spotify at Treksperts Plus or follow us on YouTube. Please follow and rate us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts to make sure you don't miss an episode. And of course, you can listen to Rob every day on the Burnettwork on YouTube. So check out, you can visit the observatory virtually and watch his show and subscribe and enjoy all the Rob musings on a variety of things, Star Trek and beyond. Not Star Trek Beyond, but beyond Star Trek.
I did do a great series on Picard Season 3 where I interviewed a lot of people and involved with the show. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
lots of
obviously
objects.
Not any of our guilty pleasures because we love that show. We love that.
I got a box of XO6 figures I could wait. Oh, man.
We just
Paul.
Easy.
I don't want to know what you're doing with that. Yeah. We just set up
putting her in a display case. That's what I'm doing with that.
Right. We just opened up the Saavik and put her on the shelf, and looks great. Another great job.
She's sitting in my command chair right now.
By the XO6 guys, really fantastic. They've been doing stellar work.
Yeah.
The Disco McCoy is coming from TMP, and so is Cage Spock.
I can't wait. I know. I really want Cage Jeffrey Hunter, though.
They're doing it.
No, I know they are, but I'm just saying. It's like I ordered Cage Spock, but I
really want Menagerie Sean Kenny
in the wheelchair.
Oh yeah,
but he got to blink twice or whatever. He got to blink. That would be awesome. You know what? I did not get the chairs. I don't.
He's not saying no. He's saying yes twice.
I didn't get like the bridge chairs. I just didn't care.
The chairs, you gotta love. I love 6-scale chairs, Mark. Come on.
Yeah, I'm not into it. I like the action figures. I don't like the chairs. I'm sorry, the museum quality replicas. Excuse me, but all
right,
the dolls with their little eyes looking at me.
How dare you?
Dead eyes.
Remember you were
like
dating
an
that
action
girl,
figure.
And she said she hated going to your bedroom because all the little eyes looking at her.
You know what her name was? Elizabeth Carr. And you know what's really interesting about her? Her father is Bud. I don't know if he's still alive. He probably is.
Bud Carr.
Bud Carr, who was Oliver Stone's music supervisor.
That's so interesting.
She was so cute. I met her.
Is that why you played Adagio for strings when you brought her into the bedroom? No.
No. But I don't know whatever happened to her. She was so adorable. She was so cute. She was sexy and funny. And I met her at Midtown Edit. Where we cut Star Trek Eternal.
That was such a great line. I just hate having all those eyes looking at me.
She couldn't dig it. She did not like my action figures.
Close your eyes, Marianne. Don't look at it.
Wow.
Anyway, On behalf of Robert Meyer Burnett, Ashley Edward Miller, DAREN DOCHTERMAN, and myself, Mark A. Altman, again, a big shout out to the Los Angeles Fire Department. We love you and we love our listeners. So keep on trekking, ingloriously, of course.